Welcome back everyone. What would happen if Naruto was in RWBY-verse? Today we find out. If you haven't liked and subbed, smash both buttons right now. Let's begin. Oh, I can't believe my baby sister is going to beacon with me. Happily cheered a young blonde woman who was seen hugging the life out of a younger woman with black red hair. She was sporting a pair of lilac eyes and hair that reached just below her waistline. For clothes, she wore a tan jacket that bared her midriff, with golden brown piping and short puffy sleeves with black cuffs that featured 2 gold buttons. Underneath this, she donned a low-cut yellow crop top with her emblem on the left breast, a heart made of black flames. She also wore a brown belt covered by a pleated brown piece of material, reaching from hip to hip around the back of her waist, with her emblem emblazoned on the rightmost pleat in gold. Underneath this was a long, white asymmetrical piece of material reaching to her knee on the right side, as well as a pair of tight black spandex compression shorts that reach her upper thighs. Her feet were covered by a pair of brown knee-high boots and orange over-the-knee socks, with the right sock pushed down just below the knee. A gray bandana is tied around her left knee with a purple bandana also around the same knee. An orange infinity scarf and black fingerless gloves completed her outfit. This was Yang Xiaolong, one of many student hopefuls on her way to her first day at Vale's prestigious Beacon Academy. The girl currently being held in a death hug was her younger sister Ruby Rose. For those wondering, the two shared a father but had different mothers, though they would both swear on Ruby's mother being both of theirs. But that's a story for a future date. This is the best day ever. Yang finished her excited cheer. Please, stop, groaned out Ruby, both in pain from the hug and embarrassment at the attention her sister was garnering. Letting her sister down, the buxom blonde raised a brow and replied, "But I'm so proud of you." Ruby held an uncomfortable look on her face at her sister's insistence on praising her. "Really sis, it was nothing," she tried to wave off. Yang was having none of it. "What do you mean? It was incredible. Everyone at Beacon is going to think you're the bee's knees." "I don't want to be the bee's knees, okay? I don't want to be any kind of knees," the young woman exclaimed before compassing herself. Muttering the rest, Yang barely heard her say, "I just want to be a normal girl with normal knees." Sighing softly, she tried to think of a way to help Ruby out of her funk before feeling a hand on her shoulder. Turning slightly, she was greeted to the side of a young man who looked to be highlighted by golden fire. He was partially transparent, allowing her to vaguely see what was directly behind him through his body. He was blonde like her, but his hair was much shorter than hers and much wilder, spiking out everywhere and only kept out of his bangs by the headband he wore. His eyes were a deep cerulean, and more than once she compared them to the ocean, while also calling his whisker markings adorable, much to his chagrin and her amusement. For clothing, he wore something slightly resembling her outfit with black pants, an orange top with a red swirl symbol over his heart, and a dark brown leather jacket with the sleeves rolled and buttoned in place just above his elbows. The headband was more of a durable elastic band with a metal plate on the front, bearing a stylized leaf symbol that had been carved into the metal. Finishing his look were a pair of black sandals and a necklace made of a singular green gem held by a durable cord. "Give her a second to take it in, firecracker," he spoke to her. "No doubt she's still trying to come to grips with everything that's happened over the past few days." Sighing again, Yang nodded and replied softly, "Yeah, I get it, Naruto." Having heard her sister, Ruby looked up to her and saw that Yang was standing alone, just as she always was whenever she spoke to Naruto. "Talking to your imaginary friend again, sis?" she asked, her tone partly teasing and partly concerned. It was something that she and their father had accepted as normal concerning Yang, with the blonde having spoken about and to Naruto since she was younger. Taeyang, their father, had taken Yang in to see a psychiatrist at the time, worried that a recent traumatic event had caused her to turn to an imaginary friend for some semblance of emotional and mental coping. But the psychiatrist had found Yang to be perfectly healthy, even with medical scans of her brain looking for possible issues. In the doctor's professional opinion, Yang was just fine, and Naruto's existence was possibly connected to her semblance. But when Yang showed that her semblance was something far different, concerns grew once more. However, both Taeyang and Ruby had decided to accept that Yang would keep talking to Naruto and acknowledging his existence until she finally decided to move on from her imaginary friend. "Yang, I love your sister," Naruto began with a sigh, "but it gets pretty annoying whenever she and your old man keep calling me your imaginary friend. I've tried telling her, Foxy. She and Dad just won't accept reality," she replied aloud, earning a dull look from Ruby. "You're talking to someone nobody else can see, and we won't accept reality," she thought, slightly incredulous. "Welcome to Beacon Academy," the trio heard, prompting them to turn and see an older blonde woman with bright green eyes on the monitor and the bullhead. "Who's that?" Yang asked, scratching the back of her head in confusion. "My name is Glinda Goodwitch." "Zip it, Foxy," she cut off when Naruto looked ready to say something smart. It didn't stop him from giving her a teasing grin. You are among a privileged few who have received the honor of being selected to attend this prestigious academy. Our world is experiencing an incredible time of peace, and as future huntsmen and huntresses, it is your duty to uphold it. You have demonstrated the courage needed for such a task, and now it is our turn to provide you with the knowledge and the training to protect our world. With the message given, her image disappeared from the screen, and Yang gave Ruby a grin. Nearly there, sis. Yep, Ruby replied lowly before something caught her attention and she moved over to the windows of the bullhead. Hey, we can see signal from up here. Looks like home isn't too far, after all. Beacon's our new home, sis, Yang told her gently, hoping to sound reassuring as she rested an arm across Ruby's shoulders. Air sickness, 8 o'clock, Naruto spoke up, prompting Yang to move both herself and Ruby closer to the window, as yet another blonde, this one a young man with some pieces of armor, rushed past them and emptied his stomach in the waste bin. Don't take any immediate steps back. He didn't make it in time. Gross, Yang groaned, already trying to deal with the smell. What's growug? What's that smell? Ruby asked, sounding disgusted. Vomit boy, over there, she answered, nudging her head to the young man still dealing with an upset stomach. Naruto. Both of you step to the left about a couple feet, then you can step back, he answered, earning a grateful nod from her as she led Ruby to their left a bit before pulling her away from the windows. Phew. Thanks Foxy. I know how you get when you step in something gross. Didn't want Little Red to get even more embarrassed, he teased. Hey. I'm not that bad when I step in stuff like that. Yes, you are, Ruby stated with a dull expression. Name one time. Yang demanded, turning her attention to Ruby. I can name several, both she and Naruto deadpanned, somehow in sync with one another. Outing, Yang crossed her arms and turned away with an annoyed huff. Betrayed by my own sister and my best friend, the world is so cruel to me. Chuckling, Naruto turned to Ruby and said, she'll snap out of it when the bullhead lands. And, like all times past, Ruby didn't react to him speaking to her, instead shaking her head with a smile at Yang's actions. Sometimes, I really hate not being seen by others. At least you can possess one of my shadow clones whenever you're in my world, Firecracker. Your world's rules suck. Yang dropped her fake pouting for a gentle smile aimed at him. I know, she replied softly, having lived with being the only person able to see her friend for many years now. Sorry, Foxy. Taking a breath, he nodded and replied just as softly, I know, just frustrated is all. He felt her take his hand in hers, and he gave her his full attention just in time to see her smile grow a bit brighter. His own smile lifted at that, and he squeezed her hand a bit to show his gratitude. To Ruby, she was only seeing Yang gripping nothing and smiling at nobody. However, part of her wondered if her eyes were shaking off such thoughts, she instead turned her attention to the view of Beacon Academy. Yang, having let go of Naruto's hand and stepped up beside her, shared her sister's look of amazement. Wow, both sisters gasped out. Whistling appreciatively, Naruto stepped up to Yang's other side and noted, nice place. Bet you two will learn plenty here. We'd better, Yang grumbled. I'm not planning on wasting these next few years if this place can't teach me anything worthwhile. Ruby was about to comment, but something caught her eye. Something dangerous and something else sharp, pointy, and covered in fire. Oh my gosh, sis. That kid has got a collapsible staff. And she's got a fire sword. She exclaimed in pure excitement as her eyes went starry. There she goes again, Naruto chuckled. You know, she and Tenten would get along great. Yep. Too bad your weapons nut and my weapons nut are from different worlds, Yang shot down in amusement. Maybe next time you're in my world and we see her, we can talk to Tenten about exchanging ideas with Ruby and offer to be the messenger birds between them. Naruto suggested. Maybe, she agreed before pulling her sister back down to earth before she took off. To Naruto's amusement, Ruby was going full on chibi before Yang brought her back to reality. Easy there, little sister. They're just weapons, you know. Boy. Don't be stealing my line, you know. Ruby looked almost horrified at Yang's dismissal. Just weapons, they're an extension of ourselves. They're a part of us. Oh, they're so cool. Well, why can't you swoon over your own weapon? Aren't you happy with it? Pulling out her weapon from its holster on her waist and transforming it into its scythe form, Ruby took a moment to hug and caress her tool of destruction. Of course, I'm happy with Crescent Rose. I just really like seeing new ones. It's like meeting new people, but better. Oh, Little Red, if only you could see me too, Naruto lamented with a soft sight. Yang gave him a quick smile before she playfully pushed her sister's hood down over her face. Ruby, come on, why don't you go try and make some friends of your own? Taking off her hood, the younger woman asked suspiciously, but why would I need friends if I have you? You can't cling to me or what you know forever, Rubes. Someday, I won't be there beside you and you'll need to stand on your own. But I'm not saying right away, sis. I'm saying someday. Truthfully, I was thinking of going off on my own as soon as we landed, but Naruto talked me out of it. Despite still believing that he was a figment of Yang's imagination, Ruby still turned to what she believed was Naruto's general direction with a relieved expression. "Oh, thank you." He chuckled, impressed that she guessed correctly where he was standing. "Told you she would freak out if you left her alone, firecracker." Yeah, no one likes a show-off, Foxy." Cheered up by the notion that Yang wasn't going to ditch her, Ruby strolled forward without looking where she was going. "Alright, let's get go whoa. You don't." Another girl's voice was heard beratingly as Ruby accidentally knocked over her luggage that had been resting on a trolley. "Uh-oh, my spoiled brat senses are tingling," Naruto grumbled, having dealt with his fair share of spoiled and entitled people in his career. "What are you doing?" Ruby got back up on her feet and attempted to apologize while the blonde duo watched on. Sorry." The girl dressed in predominantly white clothing scowled at her and ranted, "Sorry, do you have any idea of the damage you could have caused because you weren't paying attention?" "Ooh," Ruby tried to say as she picked up the case closest to her. "Give me that." The girl in white snatched the luggage from Ruby and opens it to reveal its contents. Feeling curious and knowing only Yang could see him, Naruto stepped forward and looked inside, only to whistle in surprise. Turning back, he spoke to Yang. "Looks like she's got a bunch of that dust stuff. Different colors and plenty of it. She's gotta be some bigwig's kid or something. This is dust, mined and purified from the Schnee quarry," she continued. "Schnee, isn't that the name of that dust company or something?" Recognizing what Naruto was alluding to, Yang stepped up beside Ruby and spoke aloud. "Listen, princess, my sister bumped into your luggage by accident. Nobody got hurt and it looks like your stuff is fine. Can't we just drop the issue?" Ruby perked up and nodded in agreement. "Please forgive me. It was an accident." "She's an heiress, actually," another girl spoke up. "Okay," Naruto drawled out, looking amused. "We got another theme going on here. Ruby red, lady in white, black beauty, and yellow firecracker." "Stuff it, Foxy," Yang muttered under her breath, unaware that the girl in black heard her and saw her looking off to the side. While both confused and interested, she continued, "Why Schnee, heiress to the Schnee Dust Company. It's one of the largest producers of energy propellant in the world." The newly revealed heiress looked smug and boasted, "Finally. Some recognition." "Wait for it," Naruto spoke with a smirk. The girl in black continued, "The same company infamous for its controversial labor forces and questionable business partners." Weiss's smug look of superiority was shattered for an appalled look. "There it is." The Uzumaki laughed out, his smirk becoming a full-blown grin. The daughters of Taeyang snickered as Weiss regained her composure and turned her ire towards the initial target. Ignoring the slander against my family name, she began before getting in Ruby's face and waving the vial of dust angrily in front of her. "Don't you understand the damage you almost instigated? This is dust. You know. Fire. Water. Lightning. Energy." Some of the fire dust from the vial started to puff out and Ruby reacted by coughing slightly in discomfort. "Are you even listening to me? Is any of this sinking in? What do you have to say for yourself?" The heiress finished her rant but kept shaking the vial in her rage. "Okay, that's it. One side, firecracker." Naruto growled out. "I'll teach her not to mess with Little Red." Yang almost asked him what he meant before she gave out a gasp and felt her consciousness take a backseat. "Oh. Boy, fussy britches." Naruto spoke through Yang's body, having taken temporary control. "Where do you get off yelling at my little sis like that, huh? Yes, she knocked over your luggage, but that is no excuse to be such a stuck-up little bitch about it. It was just an accident, you know." Weiss was thrown off by the sudden anger fired right back at her. So used to her presence intimidating others to silence, she wasn't used to having someone other than her father or sister get in her face like this. How dare. Yang spoke to Naruto mentally, "I'll take it from here, Foxy." Relinquishing control back to her, he popped back into existence next to her with a scowl aimed at Weiss. He'd been connected to Yang for years and shared the young woman's fierce protectiveness for Ruby, so Yang understood why he reacted like that. Truthfully, she loved seeing that side of him and how it touched her heart. Continuing where he left off, Yang poked Weiss in the chest and raged, "And for someone who's supposedly so worried about dust accidents, maybe you should pay attention to your own actions too." Swiping the dust vial in Weiss's grasp, she tilted it over her open hand to show the leaking dust before finishing, "Because you were 2 steps from blowing all our asses up, Schnee." Weiss was stunned to silence as Yang tightened the lid on the vial and shoved it back in her grasp. "Now if you'll excuse us, we have places to be and less bitchy people to meet. Let's go, Ruby." And with that, Yang dragged Ruby off and left the stunned heiress standing in place while the girl in black smirked at the dressing down she had just witnessed. It was very cathartic. "Where's the popcorn when you need it?" she mused. Ruby looked back to Weiss as she was pulled away and called out, "I'm really sorry." I hope we can move past this. The four wouldn't know that this meeting would be the first of many interactions and moments shared between them. I'll keep this brief, began a man the students all recognized as Professor Osborne, the headmaster of Beacon Academy. You have traveled here today in search of knowledge, to hone your craft and acquire new skills, and when you have finished, you plan to dedicate your life to the protection of the people. But I look amongst you, and all I see is wasted energy, in need of purpose. Direction. The students were heard whispering and murmuring among themselves at his critique. You assume knowledge will free you of this, but your time at this school will prove that knowledge can only carry you so far. It is up to you to take the first step. With that, he turned to leave as Glinda stepped up to address the students. You will gather in the ballroom tonight. Tomorrow, your initiation begins, so be ready. You are dismissed. With the golden duo and their cherry on top, they watched her leave and listened to the students speaking louder without the presence of authority figures. Yang awkwardly commented, he seemed kind of off. RWBY nodded in agreement and added, it's almost like he wasn't even there. Hey, firecracker. Yeah, Foxy. I swear that guy locked eyes with me a couple of times. I think he might be able to sense my presence. Seriously? That's good, right? She turned to him with a smile, only to see him frowning towards the direction Osborne left. I'm not sure. Later that evening, Yang plopped down beside her sister's sleeping bag, with both of them dressed in pajamas for the night. As she went to change, she had teased Naruto about not sneaking any peeks on her, but he ignored the teasing and simply smiled as he waited outside. While she appreciated how Naruto never pulled off anything majorly perverted, sexy jutsu excluded, part of her wished she would catch him peeking on her. She wouldn't be upset, believing he found her attractive enough to risk getting caught. She definitely peeked on him more than once. Despite knowing him for so long and treating him like family, Yang would be lying if she said she wasn't attracted to her friend, and not just physically. His character, his faults, and his never say die attitude won her heart a while ago. It was when she witnessed his epic clash against that Uchiha punk at that valley, and his reluctance to kill the punk, that she was at her lowest point. Naruto had almost died multiple times during the clash, and that day showed her that losing him would be like losing part of herself. As cliché as it sounded, her fellow blonde completed her. And on that day, she knew she had fallen for him. Back to the present, Yang announced cheerfully, it's like a big slumber party. RWBY, who was writing something as she laid atop her sleeping bag, replied with looking up, I don't think Dad would approve of all the boys, though. Yang hummed in agreement. There was a time she would have enjoyed the free eye candy, but she already had a preferred flavor that the guys here couldn't match. Instead, she focused her attention on the paper her sister was writing on. What's that? The letter to the gang back at Signal. I promised to tell them all about Beacon and how things are going. Not surprising she's doing that. She did get bumped up 2 years and left them behind, Naruto mused, sitting cross-legged beside Yang. Yang grinned at her younger sibling and gushed teasingly, aw, that's so cute. She was promptly knocked back as a pillow was launched at her face. An embarrassed RWBY was the culprit and she cried out, shut up. I didn't get to take my friends with me to school. It's weird not knowing anyone here. Well, you know me. And you know Naruto. I know of Naruto. I don't know him personally. She's got a point. Besides, I'm sure that Weiss girl hates me. So now, I'm on a negative friend count. Do friend counters even have negative scores? Naruto questioned in amusement. Yang agreed with him, though, and she fired back, there's no such things as negative friends. You just made one enemy. There's a difference. Her comment earned her a hit with another pillow, this time looking like a dog to the face. Ignoring the plush attack, she continued, look, it's only been one day. Trust me, you've got friends all around you. You just haven't met them yet. She's right, Little Red. And one day, I'll be your friend too. Even Naruto agrees with me, Rubes. And he says he can't wait to meet you. Yang, I'd love to meet him too, but don't go saying he ain't real, sis. You and the old man will be eating those words one day. I could always possess a random person to talk to her, Naruto offered. No possessing people, Foxy, Yang admonished with a roll of her eyes. It was already weird enough having you control my body those few times. RWBY blinked once, slightly stunned. Wait, Naruto's possessed your body before. Yang nodded with an easygoing smile. Yeah, Foxy can overshadow my body sometimes. Earlier with that Ice Queen. Naruto was the one who had me start yelling at her. He didn't like how she was getting in your face for an accident. Despite still believing he was Yang's imaginary friend, RWBY felt touched that Naruto was so protective of her. He was almost like a big brother from how Yang was making him sound. Yo, firecracker, he cut in. I'm gonna wake up now. See you in a bit. Oh, alright. See you in a sec, Foxy, she bid, waving to him as he faded out of existence. Better get some sleep. He's supposed to be heading home today with his teacher. You mean that guy you told me talks to toads? RWBY asked, having heard Yang's story about Naruto's homeworld over the years. Yep. You know, I caught him trying to peep on some girls at an outdoor bath once. Naruto and I had fun getting him caught. Anyway, we better get some sleep. Yeah, she agreed as she laid herself down to stare at the ceiling of the ballroom, her head resting atop her hands. Hey, Yang. Yeah, Rubes? Yang called back. It's not that I don't believe you whenever you talk about him, but it's hard to think he's anything but imaginary when I can't see or hear him. I know he's important to you, but… Sis, Yang cut in. Trust me, I get it. I know how crazy I sound sometimes. She turned onto her side, prompting RWBY to do the same so that she could look her sister in the face. But believe me when I say that he is real. Everything about this seems crazy, but all the shit I've seen him go through and do have more than proven to me that he's real. I just wish I could prove it to you, too. RWBY saw the genuine desire in Yang's face, pleading to her through expression alone. Taking a breath, she nodded and gave her older sibling a smile. Okay, I believe you, Yang. Relief, pure and obvious, was seen on Yang's face at RWBY's acceptance. Smiling back, she said, thanks, sis. The two sisters laid back down and relaxed themselves so that they could fall asleep. Before finally turning in, RWBY had one last thing to say. Tell him I want to know the types of weapons his world has. Snorting, Yang replied, I'll cut to the chase the moment I see him. Groaning at the lame pun, RWBY decided to just stay quiet and get some sleep. Yawning awake inside of his tent, Naruto sat up atop his bedroll and scratched beneath his chin while smacking his lips. Taking some time to stretch, he soon got out of his tent and took note of the vast trees that surrounded his and Jireya's campsite. Nearly home, he murmured to himself, remembering his teacher saying that they would be returning to the Hidden Leaf village today. He walked over to the man's tent and poked his head in to see that the toad sage was still dead asleep. Chuckling softly, he moved away from the tent and made his signature cross seal, surging his chakra briefly and summoning forth a single shadow clone that immediately used the transformation jutsu to take the image of Yang. He had the clone sit near the extinguished campfire and wait as he set to work restarting the flames to cook breakfast. By the time that the fire was hot enough for cooking, he noted his transformed clone jerk in place before Yang's voice was heard groaning and popping some joints. Still feels weird stepping into a copy of my own body, Foxy, she grumbled, earning a chuckle from him. You always say that, but we both know you've gotten used to it over the years, Firecracker. Maybe, she relented as he sat beside her and started digging through his pack for the scroll containing his food. What's on the menu? Eggs and some bacon. Pretty basic, but we gotta get on the road soon, you know. Makes sense. Been a while since we've seen the village. You getting anxious? Not about seeing the place, but about getting going. I'm excited to see everyone again, especially Granny and Shizune. Snorting, she nudged him with her shoulder and asked, remember when she personally scanned our brains to see if you were going crazy? The two chuckled at that as Naruto started cooking the eggs. I'm just glad that she registered you in case you ever somehow get stuck here permanently. You ever figure out how to use aura in the body you're using? No, she answered, popping the P at the end. Gotta say though, Foxy, using chakra is a rush. Especially when I'm augmenting my punches. She snickered and added, pretty sure the Neji guy felt it during our match with him. He barked out a laugh at that, remembering how he and Yang ended the fight with a combined punch to the prodigal asshole's face, his left hook complemented by her right. Thankfully, the Hyuga had dropped his fate complex and became more mellowed out after the fight. He assumed talking with Hinata helped. Looking up at the slowly rising sun, he smiled softly towards the general direction of the Hidden Leaf and enjoyed the moment with his closest and best friend. It would soon be their homecoming. The village better be prepared. Approaching the large gates of the Hidden Leaf village were three people. The first was the legendary Toad Sage and self-proclaimed super pervert Jiraiya of the Sanin, while the other two were his apprentice, Naruto Uzumaki, and his fellow blonde, Yang Xiaolong. The past 3 years hadn't changed the man much, save for him looking a bit more relaxed than when he had left the Leaf. If asked, he would say that it was thanks to the years spent with his apprentice and the Spitfire he was somehow linked to. Seeing their interactions and how deep their bond was reminded the man of his late student and his equally late wife. While not redeeded like the woman was, Yang was just as spirited and fiery. He held a slower gait than the two blondes, simply observing them with a fond smile as they talked about everything and yet at the same time nothing in particular. The closeness of their walk to the gate showed the Toad Sage that this bond they shared wasn't something made quickly, though an intense moment in time. No, their bond started years ago and only grew stronger as time passed by. From what Naruto had told both him and Tsunade when she had checked his mental state with medical ninjutsu, the two blondes had met one another when they were fairly young. Children who were starting to take their first steps into their futures as a ninja and a huntress. While they were concerned about him, the two Sanin both came to understand that Naruto's odd link with Yang was nothing but beneficial to his growth, especially in an emotional sense. The Uzumaki had grown up alone, full of sadness and ignorance about his status as the Jinchuriki of the village. When things were too much for him, instead of being forced to deal with it alone, he always had a friend to confide in, a companion who would never leave him and offer him both the support and the comfort he desperately desired. And that support went both ways. Naruto was fiercely protective of Yang, always prioritizing her issues before his own because he believed they were more important in the end. Jiraiya had tried to get an answer for why he had such a mindset, but he would always get the same answer. She's worth it. It amazed a Sanin when he witnessed Naruto saying those words for the first time. The raw conviction in his voice, yet the casual tone in which he said them, as if the words were the simplest thing to say. The look on his face, an expression of unyielding devotion and care for the closest person in his life. The Uzumaki spoke of Yang not as if she were a friend, but as if she were his other half. And yet, the young man was too dense to see just how deep his feelings were for his fellow blonde. He didn't realize just how hard he had fallen for her, only knowing that he would do anything for her. This was not something that Jiraiya, a known pervert and player, could help his apprentice understand. His reputation wouldn't allow Naruto to fully trust his advice. So, the man who had not been there enough for his godson, hoped that his old teammate would be the one to open the Uzumaki's eyes. After all, he was as dense as granite and Tsunade could punch granite to dust. This place still looks the same, Naruto muttered with a fond smile as he and Yang walked down one of the main roads of the village. Yeah, but it somehow feels different, huh? She asked rhetorically, earning a faint chuckle from him. She then perked up and nudged him. Found something different? Oh yeah? What? When he saw her point toward the Hokage mountain, he blinked once before smirking. About time they added Granny's face up there. Surprised her punches haven't knocked your block off yet, Foxy. I'm thinking she might be holding back because I'm her favorite. Really? The punk kid who constantly brings up her age being her favorite? Yang challenged in amusement. Don't hate because you can't relate, firecracker, he fired back, and the two devolved into a fit of chuckling as they exchanged friendly shoulder bumps. Naruto. A female voice familiar to Naruto called out, earning their attention and making them turn to see that it was Temari. Geez, you grew. You take extra vitamins during your time away. Like I would use supplements to get taller, he denied with a small laugh. Been a long time, Temari. How are things back in the sand? Much better since Gaara took over as Kazekage. It surprised us when he accepted to position, but he told us that he was inspired by you too, the blonde from the hidden sand told her fellow blondes. Jiraiya spoke up at that point. I'll go on ahead and catch up with Tsunade. Don't keep her waiting too long, you two. The two blondes nodded to him before turning to the third blonde. Sandman became the leader, huh? Good for him, Yang praised. He's probably the best pick for the role. Damn it, I'm happy he's doing so well, but I'm still jealous that he beat me to becoming a Kage, Naruto grumbled, prompting Yang to pat his shoulder consolingly, though she looked amused the whole time. You two look like you're doing well, Temari noted. How was the training trip? It was good, despite the old perv's antics acting up on occasion, Yang answered. Although, the times we spoiled it for him were fun. Yeah, like the time you kicked down the wall separating the hot springs and made it crash on top of him, Naruto reminisced with a laugh, earning a proud grin from Yang. Hey, I wasn't gonna have him perving on me. So, I decided to break down the walls between us and open up for ladies' night. Temari twitched at the bad puns, and her urge to facepalm was high when she saw Naruto genuinely chuckling at them. Those two are too much of an influence on one another. Anyway, the whiskered blonde began, we better get going. Granny's expecting us. I swear only you could get away with calling her that, Temari pointed out. Told you, firecracker. I'm her favorite. Keep deluding yourself, Foxy, Yang jested as the duo walked off. Left alone, Temari shook her head in amusement before looking over her shoulder. You can come out now, Nara. Troublesome, the Chunin groused as he stepped out from a nearby cafe with 2 drinks in his hands. As he handed her one of them, he continued, didn't want them giving me any trouble or getting any ideas. And what kind of ideas would they get? She asked in a bit of a warning tone. For once, he wisely kept his signature phrase to himself and remained silent. That didn't mean he didn't think it. Troublesome woman, why do I like her again? So, did you miss me? Jiraiya asked his old teammate suggestively as he stood in her office. As much as I miss the debt collectors, she replied dryly. Oh. You wound me with your cruel words, my fair lady. Rolling her eyes, Tsunade couldn't quite keep her smile from showing. Despite her outward attitude, she did miss her fellow Sanin. Even if she was consistently annoyed by his antics, he was a dear friend and a valued teammate from her past. He was far more welcome in her life than their other teammate. How was the trip? Fruitful, I hope. You think we'd return without any results? The man challenged with a smirk. But in all seriousness, Naruto learned plenty on this trip. Blondie too whenever she stuck around. She mostly sparred with him, but the two are definitely improving. He even came up with a few tricks thanks to her. What subjects did you teach him? For Genjutsu, I couldn't do much more than show him different ways to dispel them. Though Kakashi should have been the one to do that. Tsunade frowned. I've gone over his old reports on Team 7's training and I'm far from impressed. Especially with him waiting until they were knee-deep in a C-rank turned A-rank mission to show them surface walking. I'm guessing you saw plenty of that when you took on your recent apprentice. I saw the signs before she came to ask me. I don't get why Sensei never got on Kakashi's case, but there's nothing we can do to change what happened. At least they're ready now. Jiraiya nodded in agreement. Continuing on, I made sure to check Naruto's chakra affinities for his ninjutsu. Brat's got a major wind nature and an average water nature, which works out perfectly for him. Wind is primarily offensive, while water will give him a nice blend of offense and defense. I'd recommend getting Sensei's Brat to help him with his wind nature, though. Tsunade hummed in agreement at that. Better to have Asuma help Naruto than someone like Danzo. What about Kinjutsu? Did you get him started on that? Interestingly enough, I didn't even have to bring it up to him before we started him on that. He's rough around the edges, but he's still their kid. He's got plenty of interest like Minato did, and he's creative like Kushina was, if not a tad reckless. Dangerously reckless? She asked with a touch of concern. Not that far, but he has a couple of seals blow up in his face. Blondie and I got a kick out of those. Tsunade chuckled at the mental image. Anything else? Kid's been trying to recreate the effects of what Blondie called aura with chakra. Aura, I remember that Yang simplified it to calling it a force field. How is Naruto trying to incorporate it? Smirking, the Toad Sage replied, how do you think? With Kinjutsu. He's actually making some headway, too. A thin layer of protective armor that covered the body and is powered by the bearer's chakra. Obviously, the larger the chakra core, the longer the armor lasts and the more hits it could take. I'll be interested in seeing it when he finishes. Anything else to note? He's happy, but I doubt he understands why. What does that even mean? What I'm getting at is that I think he has grown to love Blondie, but he doesn't understand what he's feeling. Given how little stunted his growth was, even with Yang's influence in his life, I don't think Naruto ever learned to differentiate aspects of love. In his head, he loves his friends, but I'm thinking he'd unconsciously put Yang ahead of them because of his love for her. Tsunade frowned at that. You didn't think to pull him aside and tell him. Let's be honest, Tsunade. Would you listen to me tell you about what love for another is given my reputation? Fair point, and I'm still impressed how you own the negative reputation. Sensei always told us to be true to ourselves. I'm a self-proclaimed super pervert and I've acknowledged that for many years. I also know that being true to myself would impact my relationships with others, like how I'm not the best person to explain to Naruto what he's feeling. And you want me to do it? She asked with a raised brow. He trusts you, Tsunade. More than he trusts most others in the village. If I had to give a top 5, you'd probably be 4th or 5th on the list. She blinked at that. Why those positions? We both know Blondie is his number 1. Obviously. I'd put those ramen chefs as his 2nd and 3rd, simply because they've done the most for him in the village. This puts you in that Scar-faced Chunin, Haruka, I think. Tsunade nodded in confirmation. This puts you 2 at either 4th or 5th, and part of me thinks you just squeak ahead because of the bond you have with Naruto. Kid's never had a mother figure, and I can see why he'd think of you as such. Me? As a mother figure? She repeated almost incredulously. Is it really so surprising with how often you look after him? You have occasionally doted on him when he's pushing himself too far. She huffed at that, but still held a faint smile on her face. When Dan was alive, she had hoped to eventually marry him and become a mother. His death stung, and Iwaki dying only compounded on the pain. But then she met Naruto and saw how far he was willing to go for his dreams. And she felt a spark, a desire to nurture that dream of his and to protect him from what could seek to kill both that dream and him. She had bonded with a younger blonde and she developed a dynamic with him, a relationship that only grew as time went on. I'll talk to him. Where are the 2 idiots, anyway? Should be on their way. They bumped into Gaara's sister on the way here, so I told them to get here after they caught up. He chuckled and added, I bet Naruto's both happy and jealous that Gaara already reached Kage. Tsunade chuckled alongside him before a knock came from her door. Come in. Stepping inside was a smiling Shizune followed by the 2 blondes. Here's some more forms to look over, Lady Tsunade. Great, just what I was hoping to see. Hey, you're the best one to make sure they're in top form, Yang teased with a grin. I see your puns still suck. Everybody's a critic. Naruto chuckled at the byplay before he gave Tsunade a cheerful salute. Yo, Granny. Been a while, huh? Sometimes, I think it's not long enough, damn brat. Aw. I missed you too. She couldn't fight the small smile at his good mood and she got up from her seat so that she could move over to him and pull him into a hug. While a bit saddened when she felt him stiffen up for a split second, she was glad to feel him return the embrace. Welcome back. Good to be back, he replied as they pulled away. Hey. Where's my hug, huh? Yang exclaimed with a fake pout. I limit my hugs to one dumb blonde a day, Tsunade snarked playfully. You mean you didn't hug yourself today? The remnant blonde fired back. Funny, at any rate, it's good that you're both back. We can get to testing your skillsets as soon as possible and determine what your current ranks should be. I doubt that after 3 years, you'd still be a genin in skill. I was Hyun in skill before I left, Granny. You just never gave me the vest. Naruto argued with a pout. Maybe skill-wise, but not mentally. I want to see how much you've grown over the years, not just how strong you are. Yang nudged him playfully. See? Punk kid. With an equally bratty imaginary friend. Boy. Told you, firecracker. Not fun to hear, Naruto commented with a sigh. Sorry to bust your chops, but I needed to get things moving, Tsunade continued, nodding once to Shizune who then left. For this test, I'm going to have you both, along with Sakura, go up against a series of shinobi of roughly jonin rank. They'll test you in different aspects, give me their reports on how you've done, and then I'll decide on what rank to give. However, the highest rank I can give you confidently would be Special Jonin, since full-fledged Jonin demand more experience. The two nodded just as the doors opened and Sakura walked in. Naruto. When did you get back? Not long ago. Yang and I just caught up with Tamari before coming here, he answered. Sup, Pink Lemonade. Yang greeted. Seriously, why do you call me that? The Pink Cat questioned with a faint frown. At least you're not regular Lemonade. That mind reader girl is that. And how is that better? Sakura, what color is Lemonade? Naruto asked rhetorically. Yellow. And what color do you piss? Yang continued with a smirk. You sneaky bitch. I try. Moving on. Tsunade butted in again while Jiraiya smirked at the byplay. She then turned to the window and demanded, get your ass in here. Ma, a familiar voice sighed out as a certain masked Jonin hopped onto the windowsill in a crouch, giving his signature eye smile to the three teenagers. Yo. Long time, no see. Kakashi-sensei. How long were you out there? Sakura asked in slight surprise. Sup, Sensei Scarecrow? Naruto and Yang greeted the Jonin respectively. I wasn't out there long, the man answered as fully stepped into the office and stood next to them before Tsunade. I'll be the one testing you and Naruto on your ninjutsu. What about me? Yang asked in confusion. Due to you possessing a shadow clone of Naruto's, Tsunade began, we're going under the assumption that any ninjutsu you could use would just be ones that Naruto has learned over the years. That actually makes sense. However, we will be testing you all on your taijutsu. Despite using a borrowed body, you still move and act as your own person. That means you also use a different fighting style and would react differently in a fight. Got it? We're actually going to do an initiation test or whatever tomorrow morning back home. I know that you two told me about the connection that you share, Sakura spoke up, but it still sounds crazy how casual you guys talk about another world. We know, they both replied in stereo. That's weird too. Grinning similarly, they repeated, we KNOW. Stop that. Stop what? Ugh. Enough. You two can drive Sakura insane another time. Tsunade called out, hiding her smirk at the betrayed look her Pink Cat apprentice gave her. Kakashi will test you on your ninjutsu, I'll have Anko test you on your taijutsu, and Kurenai will test your genjutsu. And before you start, she cut off when Naruto and Yang looked ready to speak, I know that neither of you can use genjutsu. However, that doesn't mean I can't test your defense against them. The two younger blondes nodded in understanding. For Sakura, I'll have Shizune test your medical knowledge. I've trained her for years, and she'll know what I'd be on the lookout for. Yes ma'am. And for your Kinjutsu, Naruto, I'll have you demonstrate to myself and all the judges what you believe to be your most advanced seal. We'll confer with Jiraiya and decide on a grade afterwards. Got it? We'll go through with the tests in the next few days. Be sure to give your all in every one of them. The three of them nodded, each looking eager. That's all I have for now. Naruto, I'd like to talk to you privately for a moment. Yang, either dispel or find something to do. They both blinked at that before Yang shrugged. Alright. I'll go check the apartment, see if it needs sprucing up. Thanks firecracker. See you in a bit, Naruto bit as she left, followed by Sakura, Kakashi, and Shizune. Well, I'm off to relax, Jiraiya announced. Maybe get in some research time, too. The two remaining blondes rolled their eyes as the man left. Have a seat, Naruto. I'm not in trouble already, am I? he asked with an awkward chuckle. No, but what I wanted to talk with you about is pretty serious. Why couldn't Yang be here for it, then? Because, in a way, it involves Yang, and I don't want her distracting you. He frowned slightly in confusion, but he said nothing. Naruto, how do you feel about Yang? How do I feel? He repeated. Yes. When you're around Yang, how do you feel? What goes through your mind? Well, I love spending time with her, no matter what we're doing. We could just be hanging out doing nothing, and I'm happy. And even if she's the only one who can see and hear me in Remnant, I still enjoy those moments. I see, and how do you feel about your friends? Where are you going with this? He asked suspiciously. Please, just answer the question. I promise that it'll make sense in the end, she pleaded. Her expression made him soften his own with a sigh. I like spending time with them, and I'd do anything I can for them. Not Yang. What? Of course, I'd do anything for her. Hell, there's nothing I wouldn't do for her. And why do you feel so defensive about that? Because you made it sound like Yang isn't important to me. Did I? All I asked was if she was exempt from the same treatment that you give your friends. But you, I mean. How do you feel about me? Tsunade pressed. About you? Well, I find it easy to talk to you, sometimes. I mean, there are things that I think you'd be able to help me with better than others. Go on, she gently urged with a smile. Sometimes, you make me think that you're the closest thing I have to a mom, he admitted softly, looking away almost guiltily. Sorry. Oh, Naruto, she whispered fondly. You don't ever have to apologize for seeing me that way. I care about you very much, and I sometimes think of you as my own. You do? Of course, I do. You and I have grown closer since we first met, and we share a mutual love for one another, a storge love. Storge love, what does that mean? It means we love each other like family would, you as the son and me as the mother. There are different kinds of love, Naruto. Did you know that? No, I don't think so. That's what I wanted to talk with you about. While I'm happy that you've grown up, you must understand that there are things that you missed because no one explained them to you. This doesn't make you dumb or stupid. It's just something nobody taught you, something that a parent would normally teach their children. So, if I love you like family, what about my friends? That would be filial love, or a sense of belonging and acceptance to a group. Over the years, you've bonded with your fellow ninja and found acceptance in them and for them. How do you know the names for them? He asked curiously. Being a medical ninja, I've studied many different aspects of health. Of these aspects, I've also studied mental and emotional health, she explained. During those studies, the notion of love was given a more thorough explanation, particularly to the different kinds of it. That's kinda cool, he admitted with a smile. I'm glad you find it so interesting. Now, the next kind of love is a love for yourself. This is known as philotic love and sometimes can be a bit extreme. There's loving yourself positively and there's loving yourself too much. There are also times when it's the opposite and you hate yourself for something you've done, something someone said you believe to be true, and something you just are. That sounds complicated. Love, in all forms, is never truly simple, Naruto. It's just a part of life. Oh, so, you've talked about 3 different kinds of love already. My love for you, my friends, and myself. I know I'm not the sharpest kunai, but I'm guessing the next kind of love is what I feel for Yang. Tsunade smiled softly. Correct. Before I tell you, what do you think the love you have for her is? It's more than that friendship love, he began. Philia, she supplied, earning a nod. And I think it's stronger than storge love. You don't see her as family. I do, but I can't help thinking that it's more than that. How much more? She gently pressed. Enough to know that, if I lost her, it would hurt more than anything I've gone through, he answered. If she was taken away from my life, I wouldn't know what to do, I'd feel. Like you lost everything. That you'd never be the same again. Yeah, he agreed, looking up to meet her gaze. How did you? Because, when Dan died, and Nawaki not long after, that's exactly what I went through. I had lost the man I loved, and then my younger brother, the 2 biggest sources of warmth and love in my life, both taken from me. I became a bitter old woman who dragged Shizune with me on a self-destructive trip throughout the land of fire. Trying to deny the pain I was feeling and drown it all in booze and gambling debts. His expression was one of sympathy, and he felt some guilt at how he had behaved when he first met her. He didn't know she had gone through so much, and his bratty attitude probably didn't help. Based on that, she picked back up, wiping the tear that almost fell. What sort of love do you think you have for Yang? Thinking back on his words, and what he was afraid of going through if Yang was taken from him, Naruto didn't need much time to find his answer. I love her, he admitted softly, realization in his eyes. I'm in love with her. He saw Tsunade smile and nod. Yes. This kind of love is known as eros, a romantic and sexual love. Sexual, he repeated with a stutter and growing blush. Smirking at him, she confirmed, yes, sexual. It's not surprising to feel that way for someone you're in love with. You want to be there for her, to have her in your life, and to have a future with her. Be honest, Naruto. The thought of a family, you can see that might be possible with Yang, can't you? His blush grew and he looked away in embarrassment. Maybe. It's nothing to be ashamed of, Naruto. I felt that way for Dan when we were together. And your parents felt that for you. It was their love that created you, after all. My parents, could you tell me about them? Please. Her smile lessened to a somber one, the brightness of the room dying down slightly. Of course, I'm sorry you were never told, especially when you, of all people, deserve to know who they are. The old man, he never told me whenever I asked, and it hurt every time he wouldn't give me a real answer. I'm so sorry, but let me tell you who they were. She was glad to see him brighten up, and she continued, let me tell you about Minato Namikaze and Kashina Uzumaki. It was the early evening hours that found Naruto finally returning to his apartment after years away from it. A serene smile was on his face, one born from so many revelations that were experienced in Tsunade's office. Finding out Tsunade loved him like a son. Learning the identities of his parents. Hearing about his parents and how amazing they were. Realizing his feelings for Yang. All of it was enough to make him feel lighter than air, as if he would reach the stars if he jumped in elation. But then, he came right back down to earth when a stray thought entered his mind. Does Yang feel for him what he feels for her? Does she love him, too? He almost froze in front of his door, his hand grasping the handle at the terrifying thought. These newly understood feelings were opening up the doors for new fears to enter. The biggest being that Yang didn't feel the same. Swallowing the lump in his throat, Naruto opened his door and stepped inside. I'm home, he called out a bit weakly. About time, Foxy. Yang called from his couch. She had been lounging and looking at his old childhood comics for a couple hours now. What took so long? Oh. Granny had a lot to talk to me about. Like what? He wanted to bring up what he felt for her, to tell her that Tsunade helped him understand how much he cared about the wonderful blonde woman standing before him. He wanted to close the distance, take her in his arms, and show her how important she was to him. But his fears reared their ugly heads, and he held back. I need time to know, he assured himself, despite how much it hurt to hold back his own feelings. Instead, he plastered on a smile and decided to tell her the other revelation Tsunade had given him. I found out who my parents were. Really? That's great, Naruto. She exclaimed with a bright smile, taking his hands in hers and dragging him to his couch, while missing how his cheeks reddened and his smile softened. Don't keep me in suspense. Tell me. His smile, well not a full one, was still true as he told her about his parents. The chance to speak about them, to share their histories with Yang, would be enough for now. Someday, Yang, I'll tell you how I feel, I promise. Yang awoke with a wide yawn, never one to care about being ladylike with her actions, and sometimes just being one of the guys, according to her old friends. Even Naruto made this joke on occasion when she would be around him and his other friends, and she took the comment proudly. Sitting up, she saw that some of the other hopeful students were already in the middle of preparing for the initiation. Whether it was by going to the lockers to gather their things, to the cafeteria for some breakfast, or outside for some warm-up exercise. Looking to the side, she saw that RWBY was still snoozing away. So, she casually reached over and bopped her sister on her head. Hey. Ow. RWBY exclaimed as she was jolted awake. What was that for? She whined pitifully. We're gonna be late for initiation, Rubes, the blonde bombshell answered. Let's get our stuff. Dropping her pout for an excited gasp, the young rose zipped off in a red blur, while petals were left in her wake. Yang shook her head in amusement as she got out of her bedroll, absently spotting some golden embers gathering together beside her before they engorged themselves and took the shape of her best friend. Stretching with a groan and audible pops of his joints, Naruto commented, is it time yet, firecracker? Almost, Foxy. Me and Rubes need to get ready for it. Gotcha. I'm gonna go scout around, see if anyone is up to snuff. Ever the ninja, eh? She teased. Technically, you're one too, he reminded her with a smile before walking off. Keeping his head on a swivel, Naruto observed the multitude of potential students. Not many of them stood out, with most looking too nervous and others looking far too confident. He recognized a couple faces, namely the white-themed and black-themed girls from yesterday. A Schnee girl was meticulously looking over her supply of dust and loading the revolving chambers of her sword. Thanks to being friends with Tenten, Naruto had more of an understanding of different kinds of weapons. It helped that he and Yang would tell the weapon mistress about the different types that Beacon had so that she could attempt recreating them back in the Leaf Village. From what he could recall, the weapon was a rapier-styled sword with a needle tip that was flexible yet extremely durable. Based on her body type, the Uzumaki nodded his head at her choice in weaponry. She looked to be the type to move as gracefully as she tried to appear, and the rapier would complement her grace on the field. As for the black-themed girl that he didn't know the name of, her weapon was a dangerous mix that incorporated the sheath as a secondary weapon, a sturdy ribbon for auxiliary usage, and a gun like all weapons in Remnant were. From what he saw, the main weapon was a katana, while the sheath acted like a cleaver with a sharpened edge. The ribbon looked like it was meant to extend the reach of her katana, but he wasn't entirely sure how that would be effective. That issue was answered when he spied her katana do a 90-degree bend and fold into itself to shorten the edge length. It now looked like a kusarigama, and the whiskered blonde couldn't help but find the combination to be pretty badass. Like the Shnee, she had a natural grace to her, so Naruto guessed that she wasn't much of a heavy hitter, more like a guerrilla fighter that would be more supportive for others. Moving on, he spotted some crimson in the corner of his eye and turned to see a young red-headed woman dressed in bronze armor. She had an Amazonian vibe to her, thanks to her exceptional height and well-toned body. It was easy for Naruto to see that she was a warrior, and she would be a major contender of Beacon Academy's freshmen. Walking past her, he saw a blonde teen struggling to pull a shield from his locker. He had some light armor on, and his body was slightly toned from what Naruto could observe. However, after seeing the young man finally pry his shield free and collapse it into a sheath for his sword, the Uzumaki noted the tension in his body. His fellow blonde was a bundle of nerves, more so than the other anxious students. That raised some flags in Naruto's eyes, but it wasn't really his concern. If the kid had the balls to sneak into a Huntsman Academy and try to join, then more power to him. At least he had guts, something that he and Jiraiya could respect since that was the Toad Sage's philosophy. The final pair of people that caught Naruto's eye were an orange-haired girl and a young man with black hair that had a magenta streak on the left side. The girl was a motormouth, but so was Naruto, something Tsunade said he got from his mother. Plus, her hair was the perfect shade of his favorite color, so she immediately was put on his potential buddy list. It was a list consisting of people Naruto hoped to befriend once he and Yang found a way for him to visibly interact with Remnant. Yang could take over a shadow clone of his, she could freely interact in his world. They didn't have that option in Remnant, so they had to find one for the future. The little lady had an exceptionally large hammer that folded into a firearm with a wide barrel, a drum magazine, and some obvious weight to it, which let Naruto deduce that it was meant for power and not so much for precision like Ruby's sniper's scythe. The young man had twin pistols with dagger-like blades attached to the bottom of the muzzles of his guns. A simple combination that Naruto could appreciate since he preferred simplicity over intricacy. If he needed more than a couple of days to get the gist of a weapon and use it effectively, then he wasn't for it. Those dagger pistols were straight to the point in Naruto's opinion. I know. He heard the orange tea exclaim. We'll have some sort of signal. Like a distress signal. A dramatic gasp escaped her. A secret signal so we can find each other in the forest. Can you imitate a sloth? The sloth, Naruto repeated in amusement. Nora. The girl's friend responded. Least I got a name, now. Yes, Ren, the now named Nora asked back. Both names? Lucky me. Naruto cheered with a laugh. Ren sheathed his weapons into his sleeves and out of sight as he answered, I don't think sloths make a lot of noise. That's what I thought, too. Nora visibly thought it over for a moment before her cheer returned full force. That's why it's perfect. No one will suspect we're working together. Naruto couldn't hold back another laugh at her enthusiasm. Gotta admire that optimism. Ren smiled at his friend and shut his locker. Come on Nora, let's go. Not together, she replied with some stifled giggles as she followed him. Once again amused at Nora's antics, Naruto left and found the girls checking their weapons. As he approached, he caught part of their conversation. If you want to grow up, Yang said, you're gonna have to meet new people and learn to work together. RWBY sighed in frustration at that. You sound like Dad. First of all, what does meeting new people have to do with fighting? And secondly, I don't need people to help me grow up. I drink milk. But what about when we form teams? The blonde sister challenged calmly, making the younger sister suddenly nervous. I don't know. I'll just be on your team or something. I doubt you guys will have any say in how the teams are formed, Naruto spoke up as he stood beside Yang. My guess is that they'll be formed after the initiation when the instructors see how students do during the test, pair students into groups based on how well they'd likely work together. Yang hummed thoughtfully in agreement before relaying Naruto's theory to RWBY. However, the young Rose was having none of it. Sounds to me like my dear big sister doesn't want me on her team, she accused. And that her friend is encouraging it. The two blondes sweat dropped at that before speaking in stereo, paranoid much, Rube's little red. RWBY had a dull expression as she deadpanned, he said that the same time you did, didn't he? She could only groan when she saw Yang nodding with a cheeky grin that, unseen by her, Naruto shared. We find the hopeful initiate standing on the cliffs overviewing an expanse of thick trees that stretched for a few miles. RWBY stood on a place marker to the left of Yang's, while Naruto stood behind his fellow blonde, while keeping a narrowed gaze on the headmaster of Beacon, Professor Osborn. For years, the man began, you have trained to become warriors. Today, your abilities will be evaluated here in the Emerald Forest below these cliffs. Glinda continued, now, I'm sure many of you have heard rumors about the assignment of teams. She ignored the murmurs of the teens and pressed on, well, allow us to put an end to your confusion. Each of you will be given teammates. She gave a long pause before going for the kill. Today. RWBY looked like a frightened rabbit at that. What? Oh. Osborn spoke again, these teammates will be with you for the rest of your time here at Beacon. So, it is in your best interest to be paired with someone with whom you can work well. Naruto would have made a joke about the despair in RWBY's face, but he was too busy frowning as the headmaster met his gaze directly and held it there for a few moments before resuming his sweeping glances. That being said, the first person you make eye contact with after landing will be your partner for the next 4 years. The little RWBY, she felt her hopes and her world cracking like glass and falling apart. What? Naruto absently heard Nora say to Ren, see? I told you. Osborn continued, after you've partnered up, make your way to the northern end of the forest. You will meet opposition along the way. Do not hesitate to destroy everything in your path, or you will die. Dawn Arc laughed nervously and then gulped loudly. Osborn locked eyes with Naruto once again. You will be monitored and graded through the duration of your initiation, but our instructors will not intervene. Removing his gaze, he continued, you will find an abandoned temple at the end of the path containing several relics. Each pair must choose one and return to the top of the cliff. We will regard that item, as well as your standing, and grade you appropriately. Are there any questions? John rose his hand. Yeah, sir. Osborn ignored him and smiled. Good. Now, take your positions. Everyone but John, who still had a hand raised, took a ready stance. Naruto leaned forward and said, I'll keep an eye on Little Red in a bit. Osborn keeps looking me in the eye, and I wanted to check something. Yang wanted to turn to him, but she didn't want to raise any suspicion. So, she whispered back, be careful, Naru. Promise? Sir? John asked nervously. I have a question. He missed the tile under Weiss rising into a springboard, rocketing into the air and over the forest as the other platforms begin to activate down the line. So, this landing, strategy thing, what is it? You're, like, dropping us off or something. Osborn took a sip of coffee and casually answered, no, you will be falling, Mr. Ark. John missed more and more students being thrown as he nodded in understanding. Oh, I see, so, like, did you hand out parachutes for us? No, we did not. You will be using your own landing strategy. At her turn, Yang winked at her younger sister, put on a pair of aviators, and flew off with a loud whoop of excitement that echoed across the forest. A second later, RWBY was launched after her. John, unaware that he was next, asked, so, what exactly is a landing strategy? The last word of his query became a frightful shout as he was launched after his fellow initiates. The rest of them were then launched, leaving Osborn and Glinda alone with Naruto still standing behind the platform Yang was launched from with his arms crossed. He then made his way to the cliff's edge that Osborn and Glinda stood on, standing on the headmaster's left side while Glinda was on the man's right. You can see me, can't you? He accused, earning a barely noticeable nod from him. She can't then. Osborn gave the faintest of head shakes. I don't know how the hell you can see me when nobody else can, but you can bet your ass we're gonna talk about it. Your energy feels weird and I don't like it. He approached the very edge of the cliffs before looking back over his shoulder. If Yang or RWBY get dragged into some shit you could have prevented or that you led them to, there won't be any words spoken. My foot will be so buried up your ass that you'll be my new shoe. With that, Naruto gave a powerful leap and shot into the air high above the forest. Osborn's gaze kept track of him the entire time. What could a spirit do to me? Leaping from treetop to treetop, Naruto was an invisible blur to the world. Sure, he was actually invisible to everyone but Yang and Osborn, but his speed still counts. Yeah, just keep telling yourself that, Naruto, he muttered to himself. Now, Little Red should have gone this way. He was following the trajectory she had taken from her launch from the cliffs. He passed by that red-headed Amazonian who was helping that John guy out of a tree he had been pinned to. What was interesting was that it was the red-head's weapon that had pinned John to the tree. Pressing on, he passed by Ren taking care of a serpentine grim with 2 heads. He was skilled and light on his feet. Naruto was admittedly impressed with him. He passed by a few other candidates, but he saw no sign of Yang or RWBY. In fact, he didn't see the Schneer that black-themed girl either. Where could they oh? There's RWBY. He started before cutting himself off and dropping down behind the red-hooded girl. He then spotted who Ruby's partner was and face-palmed. "Shit. It's this way," Weiss declared, walking to Ruby's right as the young scythe wielder sat on a rock. The heiress then walked to the left and corrected, "I mean this way. Definitely this way." Naruto rolled his eyes with Ruby while she commented, "Just admit that you don't know where you're going." "I know where we're going," Weiss argued, hiding her embarrassment. "We're going to the relics, obviously. And that would be the forest temple." Ruby could only give a frustrated groan at Weiss's comment. Naruto, however, had something to say. "No shit, Sherlock. Oh, stop it. You don't know where we are, either." Ruby fired back, "Well, at least I'm not pretending like I know everything." "What is that supposed to mean?" "It means you're a big stupid jerk, and I hate you," she shouted, surprising Naruto. "Whoa, Ruby, never heard you so pissed off before." Weiss sighed to herself before spinning around and walking in another direction. "Just keep moving." Ruby scowled and then, in a faux imitation of Weiss's voice, mockingly ordered, "Oh, just keep moving. Hurry up. Wah. Watch where you're going." Despite the situation, Naruto chuckled at that. "Sounds pretty spot on, Little Red." In her normal voice, the young Rose demanded, "Why are you so bossy?" "I'm not bossy," the heiress denied. "Don't say things like that. Stop treating me like a kid. Stop acting like a kid. Well, stop acting like you're so perfect." Weiss glared at the younger girl at that comment. "I'm not perfect." Looking away, she muttered, "Not yet." Regaining her superior expression, she fired back, "But I'm still leagues better than you." Ruby had a dejected look on her face as she mumbled, "You don't even know me." Naruto frowned sadly at that and reached over to pat Ruby's shoulder, despite knowing it wouldn't do anything. "It'll be alright, Ruby." He was about to reach her when he saw something large, black, and feathery divabooming towards the girls without their notice. Blue eyes widened and he instinctively dove towards Ruby to knock her down. What he didn't expect was for him to phase into her body like he did with Yang's on occasion, overshadowing Ruby and turning her silvery eyes cerulean blue. "The hell," he muttered in Ruby's voice. "Wah. What happened?" Ruby's voice echoed in his head. "Little Red," he thought back hesitantly before shaking Ruby's head. "Talk in a sec." Thanks to being in Ruby's body, Naruto had access to its capabilities, like her semblance. So, in a flurry of red petals, he had Ruby's body tackle Weiss's seconds before the trees around them were ripped away by the force of a Nevermore's failed attack. Hey. What was Weiss tried to yell before shutting up when the large avian grim flew past them. "Thank me later," Naruto said in Ruby's voice. "We gotta move. Now." Dumbfounded, Weiss could only nod as the duo rushed away from the Nevermore circling around for another attempt. "What's going on?" Ruby screamed in his head. "Ruby. Listen, it's me Naruto. I'm piloting your body by accident, but right now I need to get you and Princess to safety." "Naruto?" she repeated, sounding stunned. Yang was telling the truth. "Yeah, you can apologize to her later. Let me focus." Snapping out of her surprise, Ruby called back, "Let me take control again. I know my body better than you, and I know how to use my semblance." Knowing she had a point, Naruto relinquished control and was ejected from Ruby's body. He was immediately keeping stride with her and Weiss when he reformed, smiling at her when he saw the awareness in her silver eyes. "You're not seeing things, Little Red," he teased, happy that Yang's sister could finally see him. Talk later, she fired back before grabbing Weiss by the arm and vanishing in a swirl of petals that shot through the brush like a bullet. "Hear me, too. Yang's gonna flip her lid." He cheered as he raced after the two girls. Yang and her new partner, Blake Belladonna, had just retrieved one of the relics from some ruins. The relics were actually just chess pieces, and the duo decided to take the night piece. Or, as Yang jokingly called it, the cute little pony. They were about to head back for the cliffs when they spotted a red blur break through the foliage before two people tumbled to a stop. When it was revealed to be Ruby and Weiss, Yang rushed over to check on her little sister, while Blake followed her. "Ruby? Are you okay?" Shaking the cobwebs, Ruby nodded. "Yeah, but we're gonna have company soon. And Nevermore was on our tail. It nearly crashed into us back there," Weiss added before awkwardly looking away. "Thanks, by the way, for pushing me out of the way." Despite not being in control when her body did that, Ruby smiled at her partner. "No problem." Yang was relieved that the two, despite the issues they had yesterday, were seemingly getting along. She then noticed Naruto arriving and smiled at him before feeling Ruby nudge her and motion her to come closer. When Yang leaned her head down, Ruby whispered, "Sorry for doubting you, sis." All confused at first, her lilac eyes widened in realization and she turned to face Ruby, who smiled and nodded once. Turning to Naruto, she saw him smirking at her and smiled back. Blake witnessed everything, having heard Ruby's whisper, and was curious about what they were talking about and why her partner smiled towards some random direction. The moment was interrupted by Nora arriving atop an angry Ursa, which gave a death groan as the orange tea blasted it with a grenade to its spine from her weapon. It fell to the ground in a heap while Nora rolled off it. "Oh, it's broken," she mumbled sadly as Ren rushed out into the clearing, out of breath. "Nora," he panted out as he braced against the dead Grim. "Please don't do that again." His pleas were ignored when Nora skipped over to the relics and grabbed a golden rook before happily skipping back to her friend. Blake couldn't help making commentary on the whole scenario. Did she just ride over here on an Ursa? Yang tried to answer, but she was cut off. What cut her off was the screeching of a death stalker as it relentlessly pursued Purah and John. They both shouted for help, ducking beneath a swipe of a pincer that was sharp enough to take the heads from their shoulders. RWBY, never one to turn away from someone in need, declared, "We need to get that thing off their tail." Nora grinned and aimed her grenade launcher at the death stalker. With careful estimation of the trajectory, she fired a triple salvo of explosive ammunition that arsed safely over the fleeing duo and crashed into the Grim with pink bursts. The death stalker hissed in pain, stumbling out of its pursuit as John and Purah made it safely to the others. "Quickly," Weiss exclaimed, pocketing a golden knight piece. "Grab a relic so we can get out of here." "She's right," Ren said in agreement. "We don't need to kill these Grim. We just need to get our relics back to the cliffs." There's a slight problem there," RWBY awkwardly stated before pointing the group's attention to the Nevermore that had arrived. "That thing's in the way." "Shit, you lot are caught on both sides," Naruto noted with a growl. "Damn it, I hate not being able to help." Yang gave him a sympathetic glance while RWBY smiled at his concern. "We need to split into 2 groups, then," Yang decided. 4 people per Grim. "That sounds like the best course of action," Purah agreed as she tossed John the other golden rook and watched him pocket it. "Us 4, RWBY decided as she gestured to herself, Weiss, Blake and Yang will take on the Death Stalker. Think you 4 could take on the Nevermore?" John looked to the others and they nodded with determined looks. Turning back to RWBY, he replied, "Leave it to us." "Then let's go," she exclaimed, leading the charge as a petal-laced blur that was followed by the other 3 girls. "Good luck, guys." John swallowed nervously before he felt Purah place a supportive hand on his shoulder. "We can do this," she assured him, and he nodded gratefully to her for helping him calm his nerves. "Alright. Nora, I need you to start firing high-arsing shots that could fall down onto the Nevermore. Ren, get its attention with some pot shots and get it to dive. With Nora's grenades raining down on it, it should force it into a sort of bottleneck and Purah could take a shot for one of its wings or eyes." The trio nodded and the team got to work. Naruto smiled at their plan and the immediate acceptance of working together. Deciding to go after Yang and RWBY, he said, "You got this, guys. John, you may have snuck in, but you're proving you belong. We need to slow it down." Blake called, using her weapon to grapple onto a tree branch and swing away from the Death Stalker's stinger. "It's big, but it's surprisingly quick." Yang rushed forward, lilac eyes already turning red as she neared the Grim. RWBY kept it distracted by shots aimed for its face, getting dangerously close to its eyes. It tried to swipe at Yang, but a glyph that was shaded a dark gray formed beneath it, cutting down its speed to a crawl, while Weiss was seen taking a knee with her rapier stabbed into the ground. "Now, Yang!" the heiress cried out. Betting right in its face, Yang unleashed a flurry of lightning-fast punches that were accompanied by fired rounds of ammunition from her shot gauntlets. "I hope you're hungry," she growled out with each punch before kicking off the Grim, taking a long backflipping leap away from it and out of retaliatory range. Weiss twisted her stabbed sword, changing the glyph from dark gray to an icy blue. From the glyph, frigid stalagmite stabbed into the belly of the Grim and made it screech in agony. The screeching got louder when RWBY finally got the mark she needed and fired a direct hit into the Death Stalker's eye. Blake came in next, wrapping her kusurigama around the joint where the stinger met the tail and tugging it with all her strength. "Snap it off," she yelled through gritted teeth. RWBY and Yang shared a look before they turned to Weiss, who nodded and produced a pair of glyphs that the sisters jumped onto. The glyphs catapulted them skyward, and Yang used her shot gauntlets to get some extra height, while RWBY used her semblance to dive towards the Death Stalker, with her scythe poised to strike. With peerlessly instinctive timing, the young Rose swerved her body away from the swiping pincers of the Grim and with a mighty swing, cleaved the stinger off its tail. Blake fell back from the sudden shift in momentum, but she smirked when Yang came crashing down with a powerful punch that slammed into the sliced-off stinger. The point of the stinger was aimed downward, and Yang's punch drove it through the dense bone of the Death Stalker, piercing it through its head and killing it. The 4 ladies were panting in exhaustion, but they had proud smiles on their faces at their accomplishment. Turning around, they saw one of the wings of the Nevermore get shattered at a critical joint, making it crash into the ground. Nora then leapt off John's shield, changing her weapon to its hammer form and using recoil from its firing mechanism to give her swing some more power. The crunching sound was heard, and Naruto knew that the fight was over. With a proud smile, he commented, "They all work well together, my money's on them being 2 teams of 4. "I love it when I'm right," Naruto stated with a grin as John was announced the leader of the newly formed Team JNPR. He chuckled when Purah patted him on the back. The new team leader wasn't prepared for it and was sent falling forward, earning an embarrassed apology from the redeed while he waved it off with an awkward smile. And finally, Ozpin continued. "That's your cue, girls," Naruto told the sisters as they, Weiss and Blake stepped onto the stage. Having gathered the Golden Knight pieces, the students Blake Belladonna, Ruby Rose, Weiss Schnee, and Yang Xiaolong will form Team RWBY. This team shall be led by Ruby Rose. "How led by Ruby," cried out, only to be cut off by Yang hugging her. "Oh, I'm so proud of you, Rubes," she exclaimed. Blake smiled at the young Rose and nodded, showing her support. Weiss, on the other hand, looked like her world had crashed down around her. Noticing this, Naruto frowned and muttered, "She's gonna bitch about this, I just knowed." Shaking his head, he dropped his frown and smiled at the 2 sisters. His gaze lingered on the absolutely glowing smile of Yang, and his smile softened at how elated she was. "She did good, Firecracker, but she'll need you and the others at her side. Nobody can lead on their own." Looking out the window, Naruto regained his frown as his thoughts strayed to his estranged teammate that had nearly killed him years ago. All it takes is one moment to break a team apart, one person to start ripping into the bond holding you all together. I hope that it never happens to you girls, but I also hope you'll be prepared for it if it does come. When the auditorium cleared, Naruto was approached by Yang and Ruby, with the latter running up to hug him tightly. Smiling, he hugged her back and enjoyed finally being able to embrace his crush's little sister. "Nice to officially meet you, Ruby," he greeted softly. "You too, Naruto," she greeted back, her face resting against his chest. When she heard his heartbeat, she hugged him a bit tighter. "Not a ghost, that's good." Yang smiled at her 2 favorite people finally meeting. Her old fears of never being able to introduce Naruto to her family were put to rest for the moment. She still didn't know how Naruto managed to get Ruby to see him. But she would worry about it another time. For now, she was going to just bask in the moment. An adoring smile was aimed at Naruto as he rubbed the top of Ruby's head, and Yang once again knew that her heart had made the right choice. "Naruto, I'm so glad that I fell in love with you." In their new dorm room, the recently created Team RWBY was in the middle of putting their luggage beneath the 4 beds offered to them. With the beds as they were, there wasn't much room in the dorm for any personal changes or additions, such as decorations or even a desk. "Might want to consider the idea of bunk beds, Firecracker," Naruto mused as he stood by the closed door. "Also, considering how long you take for your hair sometimes, you might want to lay down the law about first dibs in the bathroom." Yang fraught a snicker at his totally accurate comment. She was extremely protective of her golden locks, and any damage to her hair was met with righteous fury and a fiery beatdown. Ruby had no such restraint and gave a small laugh at Naruto's commentary, earning her looks from Blake and Weiss. "And what's so funny?" the Schnee heiress asked with a raised brow. Ruby choked on her spit at the question. Considering how it wasn't her place to reveal Naruto's existence, since he had been spiritually linked to Yang since they were young, the young Rose had to come up with an excuse. "Oh, just remembering something my dad said," she replied, hoping to sound casual enough to be believable. "He warned me and Yang ahead of time how Beacon wouldn't be like home." Yang, deciding to come to Ruby's aid, added, "We thought he was just being a concerned parent and stating the obvious, but it looks like we finally get what he meant." "Which is?" Blake pressed, not fully believing them, but not bothering to call them out. "Well, back home we had our own rooms, which gave us creative freedom and privacy," Yang continued, speaking truthfully as she realized what a dorm room meant. "But here at Beacon, we don't have much of that freedom or privacy, since we're all sharing this dorm room. It's gonna take some getting used to is all," Ruby finished, sharing a look with Yang and conveying her thanks for having her back. "Nice save. It helps that everything you 2 said is noticeable," Naruto praised the 2 sisters. Weiss made a bit of a face at their answer, taking another look around the dorm room. "Yes, I can see your point. I was hoping that our living space would be more spacious than this." "Well, what if we expanded what space we had?" Ruby suggested. "How do you figure?" Blake questioned curiously. "Simple. We changed the sleeping situation from 4 beds into 2 bunk beds," the team leader declared with a bright smile. "We can give ourselves more floor space by doing so." Yang shrugged with a small grin. "I'm down. It'd be nice to be able to put a table or something in here. Bringing a desk would allow us to work on assignments without needing to find a spare classroom or study hall," Weiss noted as she started picturing the potential new layout of the room in her mind. "But do we have tools to do this?" "I have a toolkit in a locker down in the workshop," Ruby spoke up. I put my tools there before coming here and rented the locker since I like to tinker and make adjustments to my weapon. Blake had a small smile at how everyone was slowly starting to get along. She was worried that the first few days would be full of nothing but awkward tension, but talks of bunk beds had thankfully broken the ice. "Think you could grab it really quick, Ruby?" she asked rhetorically, knowing that her new team leader's semblance made the notion of quick child's play. "You bet," Ruby declared before heading out of the dorm and down the hall in a flurry of rose petals. Luckily, Naruto anticipated her quick departure and stepped aside before she could bump into him. Now that a link had been established between himself and Yang's sister, Ruby would be physically affected by his presence. This meant that she would have crashed into him, while Weiss and Blake would have seen her hit thin air. "We're gonna need to go over things to be careful about with her later, Yang," he warned, earning a nod from her. Yang kept nodding a few more times, playing off responding to Naruto as she commented, "Yeah, this could work out nicely." For the last few hours of the afternoon, the 4 young women of Team RWBY redecorated their room by bolting together the 4 beds and changing them into 2 bunk beds. They also put up some more personal decorations such as posters and pictures taped or tacked to the walls. The last thing they did was talk to one of the passing staff and inquire about bringing in a desk and some shelves, which they were allowed to do. With the desk prepped by Weiss and the shelves filled with books from Blake, their new dorm room had been officially decorated. As for the sleeping arrangements, Blake and Weiss chose to have the bottom bunks, while Yang would bunk over Blake and Ruby would bunk over Weiss. The 4 figured that splitting the bunks between the partners made sense. Later that evening, Weiss had already turned in for the night, and it looked like Blake was doing the same after she bookmarked the novel she was reading and placed it back on the shelf. Wishing the 2 sisters a good night, she got under her covers and relaxed, allowing them some privacy. What they didn't know was that Blake was still awake and was listening to them talk. Something odd was going on between them, and her curious nature was too intrigued to ignore it. If it was something private, she would respect it and keep quiet. If it was something more concerning, she would make plans to confront them. Naruto had already left Remnant and woke up in his world, so Yang felt the need to tell Ruby what to expect when she fell asleep. "Now that you have a link with Naruto, you need to understand what will happen when you fall asleep here in Remnant," Yang began. "You mentioned before how you wake up in his world, right?" Ruby asked quietly. "His world," Blake thought in confusion. "And who is Naruto?" "Yep," Yang answered. "When we wake up, we'll be in a spiritual form that only he will be able to interact with. Luckily, Foxy has a way for us to become solid and interact with his world completely. He creates what he calls a shadow clone for me to possess after having it take on my likeness with what he calls the transformation jutsu. So, we'll be walking around in a fake body," Ruby repeated, a pensive look on her face before she perked up. "Oh. You mean like those gigai things from that manga you once read and let me borrow? What was it called again? Bleach, right?" Wasn't expecting someone like Yang to be into manga," Blake mused. "Though, Bleach is a good series to get into, and the analogy to their gigai is interesting." "I guess that's a close enough comparison," Yang agreed. "But remember this, Rubes, Naruto's clones are pretty fragile, unless he supercharges them with his chakra, the energy the people from his world use. Normally, they pop into smoke after a good hit, but he could make them last longer by giving them more chakra." "Okay, so be careful about getting hit." "Got it," Ruby replied. "Also, Foxy's life back in his home was rough, and that's sugarcoating it." "What do you mean?" Yang began before sighing sadly, and Blake was able to hear the somberness in the blonde's tone. "He should be the one to tell you. Just don't be surprised or say anything when you see how people look at him or treat him. I almost got in trouble when I punched someone who called him something nasty, and I don't want you to make the same mistake, even if they would deserve whatever you did to them." "Why does this sound similar to how Frontis are sometimes treated?" Blake questioned in her mind. "Okay," Ruby replied unsurely, sounding concerned for Yang from what Blake could tell. "Like I said, he'll tell you about it. In the meantime, get some sleep and I'll see you again in a minute," Yang told her sister. "Right. Good night, Yang," the young Rose bid before getting off Yang's bed and climbing onto her own. She pulled the covers over her form and eased herself to sleep not long after. Blake waited until she heard the soft breathing from all 3 of her teammates before she pulled the covers off her body and looked to Yang's sleeping visage on the bunk above her. She mentioned some sort of link that Ruby gained, plus there was mentions of his world, which would imply that this Naruto guy isn't from Remnant at all, but from some sort of different reality or something similar. Yang must have had some sort of link to him for a long time and couldn't get Ruby to share that link until recently. Seeing as her team was sleeping and how 2 of them were on some spiritual journey of sorts, Blake chose to lie back down and try to sleep. "I wonder, though, if everything they're saying is true and there is some other reality where Naruto exists that they can spend time with him. What's that world like? What is he like? And, can someone else get their own link to that reality?" When RWBY felt herself stir, she opened her silver eyes to what looked to be an old apartment. She was standing in the main room of the apartment, which had a couch with a coffee table, a small television on a stand with some videotapes and a movie player, and an open space that was connected to a kitchen which had a simple table and 2 chairs. There were some potted plants hung on a windowsill so that they had access to sunlight, but they had notably died from what had to have been lack of care. Well, if what Yang said was true, then Naruto wasn't home to care for them while on his training trip, RWBY mused before looking to the young blonde man in question, who was in the middle of cooking breakfast. "Hope you like eggs, little red," he called out without turning around. "It was all I can get on short notice." Eggs are fine," she answered, taking a moment to look at herself and observe how she was a spectral image like Naruto appeared as in Remnant. "This is so weird." You'll get used to it, RWBY. It's possessing a shadow clone that'll be even weirder," he told her. Speaking of which. In 2 bursts of smoke beside him, twin duplicates of Naruto appeared before RWBY's eyes. The copies then made matching gestures with their hands before they were engulfed in smoke once more. Once the smoke cleared again, she saw perfect replicas of Yang and herself that took the 2 chairs at his table. The copy of herself waved and spoke up. "You can possess me during your stay here. As soon as you overshadow me, you'll be in control," the RWBY copy told her in a perfect rendition of her voice. "Whoa," RWBY muttered before taking a breath to steel her nerves. Mentally ready, she approached her duplicate and allowed her spectral form to sink into the body and fill out the mold of it. With a small groan, she commented, "It feels like I'm wearing a full bodysuit that looks like me." Yang made a similar comment the first time she possessed a clone. Only, she said it felt like she was squeezing herself into a costume of herself. RWBY nodded at that, stretching out the stiffness she felt in this temporary body. As she got the kinks out, she never noticed Yang's spectral form appear in a burst of spiritual embers, nor did she see Yang casually enter the clone body of herself. It wasn't until she heard Yang groaning as she popped her own temporary body's joints that RWBY became aware of Yang's presence. "Hey, sis," she greeted. "Morning, Rubes," Yang replied as Naruto set plates of scrambled eggs in front of them. "Oh, thanks, Foxy." Watching Yang start to eat, RWBY looked down at the plate of food and slowly grasped a fork before she took a bite. While she absently noted the eggs could have used a bit of seasoning, she was more focused on how the body she was possessing could feel the fork between its fingers, taste the eggs in its mouth, and smell both the food and the slightly stale air of the apartment. "Holy crow, this is real," she exclaimed with widened eyes as she turned to Naruto, who was leaning against the sink and eating his own plate of eggs. "I'm actually here in your world." Tuckling between bites of food, Naruto replied, "Yep. Welcome to the Hidden Leaf Village, RWBY." Yang snickered at the awestruck silence RWBY had. Having her sister here in the village with her and Naruto was going to be interesting. "So, let me see if I've got this right," RWBY began as she strolled beside the blonde duo. She had to admit, Naruto's home was pretty beautiful and had a lot of people living in it. "When Yang and I are asleep in Remnant, we are brought here to your world, and when you sleep it's the opposite." "Yep," both blondes replied. "But what if you're knocked out and not asleep?" "We were curious about that too, until I wound up knocking myself out in the middle of setting up a prank," Naruto answered sheepishly. "After he knocked himself out cold, I forced myself to wake up back in Remnant," Yang continued. "When he didn't show up for an hour, I fell back asleep and returned to where he was still unconscious. Turns out that you need to have cognitive function for the journey between worlds." "What now?" the young Rose asked confusedly. "To put it simply, RWBY, your mind needs to be in a healthy state. Knocking someone out doesn't allow their thoughts to process, so they aren't capable of using any mental energies," Naruto clarified. "If you want more in-depth details from what we've been able to figure out, you could ask Granny Tsunade after we introduce you to her. No doubt she'll want to scan your mind and see how it's different from us." RWBY nodded before perking up as they passed by a shop with a rack of swords on display in the window. "Ooh. Weapons shop. Can we go in? Please?" Yang gave Naruto a pointed smile at her sister's request, and he chuckled in response. "Sure thing," he allowed as the trio entered the shop. Upon entry, the blondes heard a familiar voice call out, "We're not open yet," from the back room behind the checkout counter. "We're not here to shop, Tenten," Naruto called back, prompting the aspiring weapons master to reveal herself from the back room. "Good to see you again. Was wondering when you and Yang would get back," she commented, stepping out from behind the counter so that she could give them a brief hug and greeting. Noticing their tog-along, she asked, "Who's this?" "This is my little sister, RWBY Rose," the remnant blonde introduced. "Rubes, this is Tenten Higurashi. She's a member of Team 9 in the village, also known as Team Guy." "Nice to meet you, RWBY," Tenten welcomed with a kind smile. "Are you a huntress too?" RWBY, feeling more comfortable around a new person thanks to the presence of Yang and Naruto, nodded at Tenten's question. "Yeah, I am. Well, we're going to Beacon to become huntresses, anyway. Turns out, Naruto cut in, RWBY has a fetish for different kinds of weapons like you do, Tenten. It's not a fetish, damn it. She denied vehemently while poor RWBY squeaked in embarrassment. I just happen to appreciate various kinds of weaponry and utilize them as my main means of combat. Is that so wrong? And you happen to go gaga over the more famous weapons of the world, Yang added with a grin before nudging Naruto. Remember how upset she was when we told her that you guys left Zabuza's sword back in Wave Country? Tenten blushed at that before moaning in despair at their teasing. Yeah, she chazzed us with kunai and senbon for hours about it, Naruto remembered in amusement before deciding to take mercy on his friend. Oh relax, Tenten. You know that his sword served as the most respectful grave marker we could have given him. None of us on Team 7 could have used it and it didn't feel right to return it to the hidden mist or some bounty collector for a reward. Sighing, Tenten nodded in grudging agreement while RWBY asked what made his sword so special. Tenten answered, it's part of the legendary swords of the 7 hidden mist swordsmen. Zabuza was the wielder of the RWBY, also known as the decapitating carving knife. It was designed to look like a butcher's knife that had the blade as tall as a man with a hole in the middle of the blade close to the tip, while there was a half-circle notch closer to the handle, which helped the name given to it. RWBY watched as Tenten took a piece of paper and drew a rough sketch of the weapon in question, looking impressed by what she saw illustrated before her. Wow, so, it was just a really big sword. Not exactly, Naruto answered. See, each sword of the 7 swordsmen has a unique feature to it that makes them special. The RWBY was able to use the iron from someone's blood to regenerate and restore itself if it was ever cut down to a lesser size. RWBY was a strange mix of pale from fear and sparkle-eyed from awe. So, it was like a vampire sword. Yang snorted at her sister's oversimplification of the weapon and how Tenten's brow twitched at it. Basically, yeah. It's more sophisticated than that. Tenten argued hotly. All of the 7 mist swords are sophisticated. Really? Can you tell me more about them? They sound incredible. RWBY pleaded, looking excited at the prospect of learning about the legendary weapons. Tenten, seeing the passion in the girl's eyes, smirked in triumph. Finally. Someone who can appreciate quality weapons. Naruto decided to stop the bonding moment before it could get too deep by grabbing RWBY's hood and pulling her along as he and Yang left. Later, Tenten. We gotta go see Granny Tsunade. Wait. No, let me go. I found my weaponry soulmate. Come on, RWBY cried, crocodile tears streaming down her face as she was taken against her will. Yang simply waved to Tenten, who called back, next time you're around, we can talk shop RWBY. You bet. The young Rose called back before getting to her feet and waving to her new friend before falling back in step with her blonde companions. She was nice. Yeah, Tenten is pretty cool. She helped me improve my accuracy with my shuriken and kunai when I was still in the academy. You should have seen how horrified she was when she saw my efforts back then. She looked like she had seen her worst nightmare. She then gave Foxy an hour-long rant about proper grip, correct forms, and weapon maintenance, since he was using slightly rusted weapons, Yang continued. When I told her that all my weapons were scavenged from deserted training grounds, she took me to her family store and gave me my first set for free before helping me practice. She was probably my first real friend in the academy after that. RWBY, recalling what Yang had told her earlier, asked softly, you didn't have other friends? Why? I mean, you're really nice. Naruto smiled somberly and ruffled her hair affectionately. Let's just say that most of the kids were told to stay away from me by their overreactive parents. Yang looked away with a furious expression before she felt Naruto grab her hand. Looking back to him and that damnable smile of his, she couldn't stay angry inside. She really hated how overly forgiving he could be and how he hated to hold a grudge. Honestly, she blamed the old fart that was the 3rd Hokage and his influence on the man she loved. Thanks to that bastard, Naruto was repeatedly told that people who mistreated him were misunderstood and that they needed time to see the truth of Naruto's circumstances, not accepting that they were abusive idiots who treated Naruto like an unwanted beast. She, personally, thought that the old bastard just didn't want Naruto to stand up for himself, even if Naruto would be entirely justified in doing so. Looking back, she imagined the man didn't want to deal with the so-called hassle of the village's weapon standing up for itself. He was the stereotypical tired old man who took a hands-off approach because he didn't want to deal with anything. When she joined Naruto for the 3rd's funeral service, she didn't have a tear worth shedding for the man. In her eyes, it was good riddance to someone who told a victim of abuse to accept their lot in life and blame no one. It was abhorring to her. It was safe to say that Yang absolutely despised Hiruzen Sarutobi. She had confessed such feelings to Naruto before, and while he didn't fully agree with her opinions about the man, he could see where she was coming from. Truthfully, Naruto knew that his forgiving nature could be taken advantage of, but he still wanted to see the good in people. He didn't want to live a jaded life and lash out at others because of how they treated him in the past. Being angry and resentful all the time was too painful for him, and it was how Sasuke had behaved after Itachi had killed off the Uchiha clan. While such feelings were understandable, considering what Sasuke had endured, Naruto saw what such anger and resentment had resulted in for his old teammate. And he didn't want to go down such a dark path because he was afraid of where it would end, or if it would never end. That sort of darkness terrified him, and he didn't want to be swallowed up by it. The two blondes had hashed out this discussion multiple times during Naruto's training trip, and they even argued about it more than once on their clashing opinions. Fortunately, talking with Jiraiya was helpful for them both because he helped them see the other's point of view and reach an appreciation for the different opinions. It helped that the man had more worldly experience to help him help them. For Yang, she hated seeing Naruto accept what had happened in his past and doing nothing else about it. She wanted him to make the villagers see themselves for the abusive assholes they were and for them to get down on their knees to beg for forgiveness. For Naruto, he didn't want to give in to his hatred and lose himself. Doing so would only allow the villagers to always have some hold over him emotionally and could let the Kyuubi have easier access to him. Even Yang admitted that she wouldn't know if she could keep him from doing something drastic if he gave in to the power of the Biju. After that, the two blondes had grown closer, which Jiraiya thought was impressive since they were already remarkably close. "Tell her, Naruto," she told him, her voice almost a whisper after they shared a moment without words. Naruto kept his gaze on Yang for a few seconds longer before he nodded. "Yeah." But that said, the trio left the streets of the village proper and moved their location to a nearby park where it was relatively secluded. Sitting on a bench, Yang took her spot next to Naruto on his left, while RWBY sat on his right. Turning to RWBY, he asked, "I'm guessing Yang let you know that I'm not super popular here in my home, right?" "She mentioned something like that," RWBY replied softly. "The reason for that is because of what happened on the night I was born. You see, there are creatures in this world that are basically living masses of chakra. They're known as the Biju, and the strongest of them is the Kyuubi." "The Kyuubi," RWBY repeated. "Picture a fox as large as a skyscraper, sis," Yang offered. "And imagine it having 9 tails and enough power to wipe out an army of Grimm in an instant." RWBY took a second to form such an image in her mind, and she wondered what such a creature had to do with Naruto's unpopularity in his own home. Alongside the Biju are living vessels that they are locked away inside of. "These vessels, these people are called Jinchuriki," Naruto continued. "And I was made into the Kyuubi's Jinchuriki on the night I was born." RWBY sat there and listened as Naruto explained what he could about his birth night and how his father, who was practically worshipped as a hero and was at one time the leader of the village, sealed away the Kyuubi into his own son after the Biju was somehow separated from his mother, the previous Jinchuriki. She listened as Naruto told her of the devastation caused by the Kyuubi and how it was only stopped because his parents gave up their lives to seal it into him. She was then told of how word got out of his status as the new Jinchuriki and how the villagers, blinded by their anguish and hatred caused by the Kyuubi, saw him as the beast in human skin. He then spoke of how a law was passed to keep his existence as the Jinchuriki a secret, but that the damage had already been done and parents passed on their hatred and fear into their children. RWBY never realized how tears were rolling down her cheeks as Naruto told her about the lonely life he lived before a miracle happened and Yang somehow became entwined in it. She smiled when he told her how Yang's presence in his life changed it from a lonely existence into a more fulfilling one, thanks to her friendship. Throughout his explanation, RWBY saw the way Yang looked at Naruto. While she herself had never experienced such a feeling, the young Rose could easily see the love Yang felt for her fellow blonde. And while Naruto may not see the love Yang had for him, RWBY strongly believed that he felt the same for her, based on how his voice changed when he spoke about her and what she had done for his life. To RWBY, it was a story that started off sad and left her questioning about the lack of hope in Naruto's life before it changed into one of happiness thanks to the actions of her sister. It was so beautiful to her and she mentally promised to try and help Yang and Naruto find their happiness together. After all, the young Rose mused, he is practically a big brother to me anyway. Why not make it official? Meeting Tsunade was an interesting experience for RWBY. She looked so young, but Naruto and Yang wasted no time in bursting the woman's bubble and informing RWBY that she was much older than she looked. While she winced at the blow Naruto received from the rightfully irate woman, RWBY couldn't help smiling at how close the two were. As they heckled one another and threw verbal jabs plus some physical ones from Tsunade, RWBY could tell that there was a strong bond between them. So, she snapped out of her thoughts when Tsunade spoke to her, "You're also from Remnant. How did you come here alongside Yang? I thought only she could come here." "I made a link with RWBY when I overshadowed her during their test," Naruto explained. We still don't know what changed that allowed Ruby to see me and for me to possess her, but this proves that anyone I set up a link with can come here with me. Steepling her fingers, Tsunade hummed thoughtfully at that, showing she was intrigued. I'll do a scan on Ruby's mental energies later before she and Yang return. You and Yang have a similar mental wavelength, so maybe Ruby will have one that is a close match. Maybe, Yang agreed with a smile. Before that, when's our test supposed to happen? Looking at the clock, Tsunade replied, it's happening soon. I'll go there with you three and get more details about what could have caused the link to form. You know, Ruby spoke up, it's almost like this link thing is Naruto's semblance. Looking to Yang, Tsunade asked, you mentioned that a semblance was an ability or power unique to each person, right? Some are similar to others, but yeah, the remnant blonde answered as she considered her sister's observation. I'm not sure if it's a semblance though since Foxy isn't from remnant and doesn't have aura. What if I was passively absorbing aura from you whenever I overshadowed you, Firecracker? Naruto suggested. And what if you were doing the same with my chakra whenever you overshadowed me? Tsunade spoke up, it's possible that you two have acclimated to different energies since you both have had this link for many years, but that doesn't explain Ruby. She only established this link recently. Her expression turned contemplative and she murmured aloud, although aura is thought to be only half of chakra, so maybe the difference in energies isn't enough to deny the link, perhaps it's simply his spiritual energy forming a connection or tether to yours that creates the link. Granny, we're losing you to the rabbit hole, Naruto warned jokingly, snapping Tsunade from her thought process. We can figure this out more later. In the meantime, we should probably meet the others for our test. While she was too interested in the possibilities concerning Naruto's ability to form a spiritual link, Tsunade had to concede to him. They would be late at this rate. Let's get going then, she stated as the foursome left her office for the training grounds. It was quite the reunion for Naruto and Yang when they arrived. Seeing as Kurenai would be testing them on their resistance to genjutsu, she had brought along her team since they had been training earlier that morning. Asuma and his team had spotted them while they were taking their team lunch and decided to join them, though Yang and Ino knew it was just an excuse for Asuma to spend time with the admittedly gorgeous Jonin Kunoichi. Anko was hanging out with Kakashi and had dragged him to the training grounds so that he wasn't late as usual. Though, Naruto and Yang were both surprised to see how she held onto his arm as they talked with their fellow Jonin. While surprised, both blondes were happy for the obvious couple. Yang handled introducing Ruby to Naruto's old classmates. She knew her sister wasn't a fan of large crowds of new people, so she stood close to her and helped ease her into joining the conversation. It helped that most of them were more focused on talking to Naruto and herself than speaking to Ruby. While rude, it was fine since Ruby was more comfortable observing. Naruto was happy to see the other rookies once again and could catch up with them. While he was away, they all had advanced to Chunin rank, save for Neji who had become a Jonin. Team Guy wasn't present, but he could talk to Lee and Neji another time. Ino had spoiled it for Shikamaru when she practically yelled that he and Tamari were dating and acting as the liaisons between the leaf and sand. Naruto had jokingly warned him not to upset Tamari or Gaara would kill him. That warning had led to probably the most interesting bit of news in his opinion. Apparently, to further cement the remade alliance between their villages, Hinata and Gaara had been politically engaged to one another. Tamari didn't want to say anything since she felt it wasn't his place, but Naruto wondered if Hinata was alright with this since he had been told about her crush on him by Yang. The soft-spoken Hyuga assured him that she was fine with the engagement because it was the best case scenario for her. When he asked her why, her response was something he honestly should have expected. I was worried about what my position as the heiress would mean for my little sister, Hanabi. I was prepared to decline my right to become the future clan head, but then my father informed me about the political marriage to strengthen the alliance between our villages. According to him, since it would be a massive sign of disrespect, I wouldn't be branded with the cage bird seal, and Hanabi would take my position of heiress while I became the future wife of the Kazekage. I get that, Hinata, Naruto commented. And I'm happy that this is working out for you, but are you happy with this? Hinata smiled at his concern. I'll admit that I was scared at first since I still remember what Gaara-kun did to those hidden rain genin during the Chunin exams. But after spending some time talking with him and seeing the man beneath his scared rumors, I realized that he could be someone I can genuinely fall in love with. He isn't very expressive, but I can tell that you and Yang helped inspire him to become a better person. He made an unsure face and hesitantly asked, and he's not a replacement for me, right? Hinata, understanding why he was concerned, couldn't help giggling at his question. Not at all, Naruto-kun. Sure, he wants to be like you, but only in the sense of doing right by his village and becoming more than what they saw him as. Those were the only similarities between you both, and I admire the ways Gaara is different from you, enough to admit that I'm looking forward to the marriage. Yang smiled at that and said, well, I'm happy for you, Hinata. And I hope you and Sandman have a wonderful life together." Naruto nodded and added, "Just be sure to invite us to the wedding." Hinata blushed at that and confessed, "I actually have a request from Gaara for you, Naruto-kun. He wanted to know if you'd act as his best man for the wedding. I was going to have Hanabi as my maid of honor." While surprised at the request, Naruto was incredibly touched by it and grinned at Hinata. "Absolutely. I'd be honored." Hinata smiled back and hugged him in thanks. After that, Naruto learned that Kiba was training with the Hunter Ninja squads, while Shino was receiving training from his father and, surprisingly, Hiruka about becoming a future instructor at the academy. Kiba was always one for a good fight, so hunting bounties wasn't unexpected, but Shino wanting to teach future ninja and Kunoichi was. Still, Naruto wished them both luck in their endeavors and promised to train with them sometime in the future. Ino had joined her father for training in the torture and interrogation force. Considering how her father was an expert in that field and that someone like Ibiki Marino was part of that division, Ino would receive top-notch training and would excel. However, Ino confessed that she wanted to use her experience in that division to become a psychiatrist in the future. Apparently, a clansman of hers had committed suicide recently and she felt it could have been avoided if he had received proper psychiatric care. It didn't help that he was a cousin of hers that she knew since she was a child. But the loss of her cousin served to fuel her drive to help people stay in good mental health. She wanted to save people from falling down the path her cousin unfortunately went to. Shikamaru, aside from being a liaison, was being nominated to act as the future Jonin sensei of the first ever joint Genin team between the Hidden Leaf and Hidden Sand. It would be a standard team of 3 Genin, but 2 of them would be from the Sand and stay in the Leaf under his instruction. Naturally, Shikamaru found it to be troublesome, but he admitted that it would be a challenge that he genuinely looked forward to. It would be a test of his mental capacity to teach 3 Genin and find ways to mix the different cultures together to become a cohesive unit. Finally, Choji was being rigorously trained by his father and by Asuma so that he could apply for the 12 Guardian Ninja. According to Asuma, who was once a member, they were the bodyguards of the daimyo and served him directly. To reach such a position was a huge honor, but it required immense dedication and training. And while Choji was more of a pacifist, he had learned how to put aside that mentality when it came to his duty and to his comrades. After all, while it was often noble to be a man of peaceful solutions, there was still such a thing as the dangers of cowardice and rigid pacifism, especially when you needed to act. Because in this world and all other worlds, the only thing that evil needs to win was a good person to stand on the sidelines and do nothing. Naruto was proud of his old classmates and the goals they had set for themselves, or the ones offered to them and they accepted. But now, he, Sakura and Yang had a test to complete. RWBY stood off to the side by Tsunade and Jiraiya, who arrived not long after Naruto started talking with his friends. Like Tsunade, he was interested in how RWBY was there, but he put it aside in favor of observing the test. Kakashi spoke up with his signature eye smile, "Okay then. The first test will be your taijutsu against Anko and myself. Sakura, you will face Anko while I will face the twin blondies." "I thought Anko was testing all of us on our taijutsu?" Sakura asked confusedly. "That was originally the plan, Pinky," Anko began with a small smirk, "but it's better for Cyclops here to face them. He'll be whipping out his pink eye when he fights them so that he can analyze the differences in their fighting styles while experiencing them firsthand. Meanwhile, you'll immediately go on to your medical ninjutsu test after this test and patch everyone up." Sakura nodded in understanding while Naruto and Yang wasted no time and blitzed Kakashi, much to her surprise, since the Jonin never gave the starting signal. Anko simply had her smirk grow into a grin before starting Sakura's test. "Naruto Shippuden asked. The 4th Hokage." Kakashi lifted up his headband, revealing his Sharingan and leaping back as Naruto blurred into view where he once stood, crouched low, while Yang suddenly appeared with her hand on his back to hold herself up for a vaulting spear kick that barely missed due to Kakashi's quick evasion. Blowing through her kick and getting back on her feet, Yang rushed Kakashi while Naruto was right behind her, both blondes grinning in excitement for the fight before them. Kakashi took his stance and watched as the 2 blondes zigzagged at high speed before Naruto vanished from sight and Yang closed the distance, throwing a punch that Kakashi caught with his palm. He twisted his body and pulled her so that she flew past him, while Naruto reappeared above him with an axe kick that the Jonin avoided with a twisting lateral jump. Naruto's foot cracked the earth and he vanished in a plume of smoke, swapping places with Yang who leapt to Kakashi with a spinning kick reminiscent of the leaf hurricane that Kakashi ducked under. He then reached up and gripped Yang's outstretched leg before spinning around to hurl her at Naruto, who leapt over her while clapping his hands together. "Release," he called out, and his chakra flexed enough to make spiderweb cracks on the ground. Grinning deviously, Naruto said, "Hope my speed wasn't too much before, sensei. Because I'm actually much faster, Tobeo." Vanishing once again, a multitude of whisker-faced blondes spawned into existence and surrounded Kakashi in a series of high-speed movements that made them hard to track. RWBY, who was all about speed thanks to her semblance, noticed right away that they weren't actually copies of Naruto, but were rather afterimages produced by his intense speed. She then spotted Yang rushing in, her form phasing through the afterimages as she rushed Kakashi. 1. Frontal attacks won't work, Blondie, the Jonin admonished, but frowned when she smirked and suddenly vanished. He couldn't think on it because his Sharingan caught Naruto going in for the first time since he started his afterimage trick. He blocked a hit from his left, only to immediately deflect one aimed at his back, only to then swerve away from one aimed at his face. His old student was so fast that each blow was deliberately made to glance, so that he couldn't be snagged. Kakashi ducked beneath a roundhouse, only to frog leap to avoid a sliding kick, but this left him open for Yang, who had dropped down with her fist reared back for a devastating punch. "Got you," she declared, her fist cracking against his back, but she clicked her tongue when a shattered log took his place. Getting back to her feet, Naruto reappeared beside her with his hand on her shoulder. "Ready?" "Yep." "Brace yourself," he warned before her world blurred thanks to him pulling her along for the ride. Kakashi had just missed them, his hands erupting from the ground to try and grasp them. He had barely pulled himself out of the ground before being forced to cross his arms to put up a last-minute defense against a double uppercut from the two blondes. Unfortunately, he couldn't prevent himself from being lifted off his feet and into the air, and he suddenly felt his ankles being grabbed before his world started spinning. Naruto, in midair, started flipping with Kakashi in his grip before flinging him down, so that he was sent hurtling to the ground. Before he could impact, though, Yang had reappeared, her body already mid-jump as she delivered a rushing dropkick to Kakashi's chest. The sudden change of trajectory and the increase of momentum was hard for him to brace for. However, he was brought to an abrupt halt when he felt the back of his head slam against a rough hand that immediately curled its fingers for a solid grip before slamming him into the ground face first. Then music. However, he vanished into smoke upon impact, showing that he had swapped with a shadow clone. The real Kakashi staggered out from behind a tree, a hand gingerly pressing against his chest where Yang had dropkicked him, while his free hand was held up to signal an end to the test. "Not bad, you two," he praised with a wince. A few of his ribs were either cracked or bruised. "Your fighting styles complement each other, with Naruto disorienting the target with his speed, while Yang hammers against any defenses they put up. Not to mention how Yang is used to you taking her along for the ride, Naruto. How long did it take for her to stop throwing up?" Yang turned a bit green at the memory. "A few weeks," she groaned out, fighting the urge to gag. "That's actually better than you'd think," Tsunade spoke up as she approached them alongside Jiraiya and RWBY. Sakura had also finished her spar against Anko and was being overseen by Shizune as the Pincat healed herself and the special Jonin. "It takes incredibly effort to get your body used to such a high rate of movement. It's too disorienting for you to keep your balance at first, and your body reacts by throwing up." Yang nodded. "Yeah, when Foxy first started helping me adjust to his speed, it was hell. I was too afraid to eat anything because I was worried that I'd just have it come back up. I also had trouble sticking my landings at first," Naruto confessed. "Moving that fast for extended periods of time is hard on the body." RWBY made a face at that, recalling her own speed-based training. "Tell me about it. I kept crashing into walls and people when I first started training my semblance. It wasn't fun." The two adults chuckled at the commentary from the teens. Meanwhile, Sakura had patched up Kakashi and checked Naruto for any injuries before shrugging when she found none, save for some slightly strained muscles from his high-speed movements. Now that the taijutsu portion was finished, Kurenai tested the blondes on their genjutsu defense. She started with low-level ones, which they quickly brushed off with little effort. Moving on to the middle-tier ones, she was pleased to see them break free from those as well without much trouble. It took them a second to spot the illusions, but dispelling them was quick and efficient. When she went for one of her stronger illusions, the clone that Yang occupied suddenly popped, which caught everyone by surprise before Naruto waved them off. "Well," Yang commented, once more in a spiritual form, "that happened. It's fine, guys," Naruto reassured the others. The genjutsu was just too much for the chakra forming the shadow clone to handle. "Hang on." Forming another clone, Yang quickly took control of it and stretched out the kinks. "I saw myself bound to some tree before I was suddenly out of the clone body," she explained to Kurenai, so that she knew the genjutsu still took hold for a moment. Nodding, Kurenai replied, "I suppose higher tier genjutsu result in the clone becoming unstable and dispelling. This also has a beneficial effect for Naruto, though. Because the influx of the returning chakra disrupts any hold a genjutsu may have on him, breaking him free in an instant." Tsunade mentally noted everything to record on paper for later. "Well, at any rate, I'm assuming they both pass your evaluation." "Yes, Lady Hokage." They're more than ready to deal with anyone trying to use genjutsu on them. Excellent. Yang, you're done for now since all that's left for Naruto is his ninjutsu and kinjutsu tests. Shrugging, the remnant blonde shared a fist bump with her fellow blonde before she moved to stand beside RWBY, who congratulated her on her performance before showing her amazement at the taijutsu portion and how fast they had moved. Kakashi, who was waiting for Kurenai to finish, had Naruto come over for his ninjutsu test. Alright, Naruto. I've been told by Lord Jiraiya that you have wind and water natures. Yep. Wind for offense and water for a mix of defense and offense, Naruto confirmed. Glad to see you know their specialties. For this test, I want you to perfectly execute 4 jutsu of your choice. 2 of them must be wind jutsu, and the last 2 must be a defensive water jutsu and an offensive one. Got it? And do, the Uzumaki replied before reaching into his pouch, tossing out a few shuriken, and going through the hand seals for his first wind jutsu. Wind style. Rotating shuriken, he intoned, surrounding the shuriken in small spheres of wind that caused them to float in place and spin dangerously. Kakashi observed as Naruto controlled the shuriken, using his jutsu to alter their flight paths with little effort and then orbit him in erratic patterns as a form of defense. Very good. You even made it into a passable defensive barrier, something most wind jutsu can't do. Ending the technique, Naruto caught each of his shuriken before they could hit the ground and replaced them in his pouch. Yeah, it took quite some time to learn how to control multiple shuriken at once and have them act separately from each other. I'll bet. Now, show me your next jutsu. Nodding, Naruto held the ram hand seal and gathered wind in front of himself, condensing and pressurizing it continuously before he flexed his chakra and sent the jutsu flying to the trees ahead of him. When the compressed wind made contact, it expelled all of the pent-up wind as a massive dome that shredded the targeted tree and various other ones that were in the same vicinity. Whistling at the impressively destructive display, Kakashi commented, "That was pressure damage, right?" Naruto smiled and explained, "That's currently my strongest jutsu for wind style. It takes me some time to prepare, so I'd have some shadow clones run distraction as I get it ready. And if I use exploding clones in conjunction with a jutsu, it becomes a massive fireball of destruction." Nice work. Now, show me your defensive-based water jutsu, Kakashi ordered. Naruto complied by popping the cork of a water skin strapped to his belt before going through a few hand seals. Water style. Water encampment wall. The water from the water skin poured out before becoming an all-encompassing wall that surrounded Naruto and hid him from sight. Slowly, the same water evaporated and became a thick mist that spread out wide and reduced visibility by a frightening degree, while Naruto had vanished from sight. With his voice coming from every direction within the mist, Naruto called out, "I'm still working on creating this without an existing water source, but Pervy Sage helped me get a grasp on the silent killing techniques used by the hidden mist. So, I figured that the ninja art hidden mist jutsu could count as my offensive water style technique for this test." "Makes sense," Kakashi replied, watching the mist fade away before looking over his shoulder to see Naruto with the tip of a kunai pointed at his liver. "You're good, but you need to quiet your breathing a bit more. Your breath became a bit faster as you got close." Nodding in thanks for the advice, Naruto stowed away his kunai and grinned at his old sensei. "So, do I pass?" Kakashi gave his signature eye smile and nodded back. "Yes, you do. Excellent job, Naruto. I'm proud of what you've accomplished." "Thanks, Kakashi-sensei." Giving the blonde Uzumaki a lazy salute, the Jonin headed over to where Sakura was so that he could administer her ninjutsu test. Meanwhile, Asuma, Kurenai, and Anko moved over to him. "First off, congrats, kid," Asuma started off, earning a thankful nod from Naruto. "Now, the 3 of us will judge your kinjutsu. Normally, Jiraiya would do this, but we need to have an unbiased opinion since he was your instructor." "Gotcha. So, I just show you one of my better seals, and you guys give me your scores." "Exactly," Kurenai answered with a smile. "I'm looking forward to what you'll show us." "Bet on with it," Whiskers Anko urged with a smirk. Chuckling at her nickname for him, Naruto started to walk away from the adults before stopping when he was a safe distance. "Asuma-sensei, I want you to use the fireball jutsu on me." Curious, the Jonin of Team 10 asked, "You sure, kid?" "Yep. Go ahead," he replied, holding up his left palm. Asuma shrugged and performed the jutsu, blowing out a fireball that roared to life and flew at Naruto, only to vanish from sight. The 3 older ninja then saw Naruto hold his right palm to the sky and unleash a fireball that flew upwards before dispersing into embers. "You went with that one, huh, Foxy?" Yang asked with a knowing grin. "What do you mean?" Kurenai asked. Chuckling, she answered, "I like to read this comic called Bleach, and I got Foxy to read it too. One of the characters we like has a weapon that inspired the twin seals you just saw in action." The seal on my left palm absorbs a single jutsu, and it's connected to a sister seal on my right palm that expels that same jutsu. I can also use my own chakra to make whatever jutsu used against me stronger or weaker, depending on who I unleash it on, Naruto continued. The weapon was called Smjio no Kodaari, which means Truth of Pisces. So, Foxy made the seals look like fish to pay homage. Naruto showed his palms and revealed the seals, showing a pair of fish that, when matched together, formed the yin-yang symbol. Not bad, Whiskers. I can see that catching people by surprise. Anko praised. Does it only affect jutsu that aren't being personally held by the opponent? Kurenai asked curiously. Like, for example, Kakashi's lightning blade. We tested it on my Rasengan, Jiraiya informed them as he, Tsunade, and RWBY approached. It took some tweaking, but we managed to make it absorb and redirect any singular jutsu. So, it won't work fully on jutsu with multiple shots or parts, Asuma deduced. Yep. But that's where shadow clones come in, Naruto replied with a grin. They can use the seals too. Well, I say Whiskers passes with flying colors, Anko stated. I agree, Kurenai added. Full marks, Asuma concluded. Tsunade nodded and gave Naruto a proud smile. Congrats, Naruto. I hereby grant you the rank of Chunin for now. After a few missions, we'll see about a future promotion. Hell yeah. Yang cheered, leaping into Naruto's arms as he spun her around, and they laughed, unaware of the others having knowing smiles on their faces. RWBY watched them with a soft smile. They're two idiots in love, she mused, knowing Yang had some idiotic moments and having been told about a few of Naruto's own idiotic moments. I just hope they stop being idiots long enough to tell each other how they feel. Only time would tell if her hopes would be fulfilled or if they'd be dashed. Thank you for watching. I hope you all enjoyed the story. If you did, please like the video. Also consider subscribing and sharing this with your friends. This will really mean a lot for me. I'll see you in the next one.